on, but it got dirty today, so I've changed. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order of our Natural Resource Committee for the month of June. Can we have a roll call to see who's here?
Certainly.
Thank
Jerry
you.
Herman.
I'm here.
Bob Roth.
I think so.
Brian Boyce. Absent. Hopefully he'll show up soon.
We
Douglas
hope so.
DeHart.
Here.
Richard Craven.
Here.
Ginger Redlinger.
Here.
I'm Pete Walter, and tonight we also have Tony Conco, Community Development Director, and we have an audience member, Bob LaSalle.
All right.
Thanks. And here comes Brian now.
All right.
Okay.
So Brian is present.
Hours sweet.
Pass that back. We started the meeting.
We can go ahead and call for the second item.
Yeah,
We're just into the call to order. Roll call's been done. So next up is citizen comments.
Okay, do we have any?
Okay.
Okay, he's just looking around.
No
Okay. Okay, since there's no citizen comments, we'll go ahead to adopting the minutes.
We have minutes from March 30th, 2014. Just a quick reminder on how to use the touch screen. In order to see the document, you have to highlight it on the left-hand side, then hit the Documents button, and then highlight the document again and hit View Document, and it'll show up on your screen.
There we go.
This is when we had a goal-setting work session. Mayor Neely was there. Carol Camus was there. All the names are spelled correctly, as far as I can tell.
Move to accept the minutes.
We have a motion.
Okay,
I second the motion.
I have a second by Doug to accept the minutes. Do you want to do a consensus or?
yeah, we can. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. I will now consider the minutes adopted.
Thanks.
Okay, but then we've got staff report.
All right. So we, Bob Roth has had prepared our template based on our draft revised bylaws for a work plan, an annual work plan, which is required per our duties, and the work plan is. I'll let Bob kind of introduce this, but the framework is set up so that the work plan items, which need to be fleshed out, tie in directly to each of our responsibilities in the revised draft of the bylaws, which are promoting community involvement in natural resources conservation. That's responsibility 1. Responsibility 2 is to initiate recommendations to comprehensive plan codes and policies with respect to natural resources. Responsibility 3 is to receive notice of and comment on land use applications and city activities within the city and UGB which have the potential to affect natural resources. Responsibility 4 is to conduct orderly meetings that result in good communication between staff and city departments and other advisory bodies and groups and planning commission. And responsibility 5 is to coordinate with PrAC, Planning Commission, and City Commission on at least an annual basis. And so each of these 5 responsibilities is broken out into some sub-actions, which form the basis for a work plan. And I included Bob's framework, and then I briefly went in and what I did is include staff's edit, but all I did was add a column with respect to the city commission goals and policies, goals and objectives on the right-hand side of the table. And I did add a 5th, under responsibility 5, I added the specific task to report to the city commission at our earliest possible convenience on what we've been doing. So I also wanted to provide this opportunity for Tony to provide his input, because he's talked to you about this, and Doug Neely and David Frazier about this work plan formation as well. So,
yeah, so I think just to give the rest of the Natural Resource Committee an update, Jerry, Brian, and Doug came in and met with Doug Neely, David Frazier, and myself, expressing some concerns and desires to improve communication between staff and the Natural Resource Committee, and trying to find ways to get a better understanding of what the roles and responsibilities are, and when recommendations come forward, how do those get processed in a timely manner and in a way where I think due consideration is given to those recommendations. And then also, really trying to figure out what is the role. And I think you guys have taken a good start at that, because when you read kind of the NRC that's codified in the original, there was so much, that thing was so wide and with so much discretion and kind of lack of direction on where to head. I think it was frustrating not only for you but also for staff on trying to get our hands around what do we do with this and how do we do this effectively. I think and some of the discussion was pretty frank. There was some email to train lines that went around, with concerns about the perception that staff continually just says we don't have staff and we don't have money to do work. It's unfortunate that that's the perception, especially amongst our volunteer groups, because it is a reality. As a department head, I have a budgetary responsibility to stay within the budget that's been approved by the City Commission. I think most of you are aware of PrAC, and I think one of the things we talked about was, what's so difficult about the natural resource is that it's citywide, and it's not compartmentalized in a department. I think one of the 6, we talked a little bit about the Transportation Advisory Committee. I think they're so successful because you have a public works department that's there and can go put in the stop signs and go put in the speed bumps and go do the traffic studies. TAC is directly tied to transportation, and you got a way to implement it. Even PrAC to some extent, they have a Parks and Rec department that can determine, off-leash areas, these policy discussions, and a place to implement them. I think we struggle a little bit with this is, we're going across multiple departments, and I don't actually have a staff that goes out and does projects per se. I don't have a staff that goes out and, whether it be pest management, we're not the ones who implement it, and so it kind of stretches across multiple departments, which means we've got to get all of them in here, and multiple agencies as well. That could be, for example, the discussion about coming up with a pest management plan for areas along the Willamette and Clackamas River. You're getting into city property, URA property, Parks and Rec property responsibilities, public works responsibilities, and so trying to fit this, I think, has been difficult. So the discussion has been, how do we improve that, and what are those opportunities to make it so that is done in a better manner. And so I don't know if you gentlemen were there as well. Does that seem reasonable kind of synopsis of what we talked about?
Well, Mr. Chair, Tony, one comment at least. I think you nicely summarized it, and just as an aside, I thought it was both a very constructive discussion, and I'm real glad to see that we're all meeting tonight pretty much focused on what the committee is trying to do and whether we're on the right course in our bylaws revisions and our work plan, and I'd just like to say we're real anxious to get good feedback and input, and you know, if there are things we should be correcting or redoing, I think we're all anxious to do that. But I think you also just put your finger on what came out of that last discussion as the most difficult piece, or the piece that doesn't have an obvious solution. I mean, other pieces of it, you know, working together, understanding what our roles are, following through on our responsibilities. Well, you know, we got to do all that stuff, but it's fairly straightforward. But now down to this, what happens when we take up issues that are outside of the scope of the planning department? How do we coordinate those? You know, what's the structure? What's the mechanism? You know, I mean, I came out of that meeting, and I think you're kind of saying the same thing with the you know, the issue still in my mind. That's not quite resolved yet, and we're still looking for the most effective.
It's going to be a work in
handle
progress
for that one. Yeah, and I think you put your finger exactly on it. I mean, that's probably the biggest single unsolved issue in how the committee works effectively.
And I think, you know, in reading through the proposals that, you know, are in your agenda tonight, you know, really, how do we, you know, for example, you know, one avenue is PrAC, right? Getting that meeting with PrAC, trying to see where there are alignments, you know, in where are the areas where NRC and PrAC overlap, and that assistance can be needed or provided, right? And then, you know, the next question is, let's say there's something that NRC would like to pursue, but it's not on PrAC's work plan, or they're not. What do we do that? You know, you know, but where, I guess the first step is where are there areas where these overlap, and we can provide input that would be helpful or beneficial either way, right? And so, you know, it was good to see that in there of, you know, how do we increase our discussion, our contact with PrAC. It's just one example of which will hopefully start to help that. So before I move on, Brian and Jerry, anything else you'd like to add, or any questions that anyone has?
Well, yeah, you did summarize it pretty well. It's, you know, like you say, parks goes with parks, and urban renewal goes with planning, and, you know, but we go with all of the above. And that's really, I think, a big part of the issue. Plus, on top of that, having that extraordinarily broad charge in the original bylaws, which you
we
know,
have resolved.
only made it worse. You know, but that's why we're working on this tonight, to get it, at least that portion of it, a little more directed, and that will help with the rest of it, I'm sure.
And one other aspect that I think the meeting was all about, and the meeting with the mayor that we had prior to the meeting that we had on Monday with David and Tony, was to hash out what happened to the recommendation and how can we avoid in the future. That's what our last meeting was discussing, and previous meetings, what was any recommendation in process, and we never quite knew. Hopefully that has a new mechanism of being responded to, because that's still fundamental. I'm certainly not going to spend a lot of time here if our effort goes into a black hole, and I don't think that's your intention either. So after 5 months of waiting for some kind of response, we heard a response, but it wasn't something that we were invited to participate in. So that was the substance of why we got together too. So I don't know what you have to say about that, but that certainly is one of the things that was concerning us. So.
Well, I think that, you know, we're going to try to make an effort to streamline that recommendation process and formalize it better.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, obviously we've got kind of like a long-term working relationship inside community development, but the other departments, in a sense, what's their mandate or charge officially for interacting with this committee? I'm just, public works or something like. I'm just kind of curious, in a formal sense, how they see, the interaction or when the responsibilities or topics overlap.
I think. I know it's probably been sporadic. Like, for example, you have, a requirement to go try and meet with PrAC. PrAC doesn't have that same requirement. So I mean, there's, being the newest of the committees, there's some of that's mandated in yours, which give the expectation that we're going to go meet with them, and PrAC, doesn't have that requirement. So how do we build that relationship and work that in so that it becomes a regular occurrence. You know, and I just don't think that's happened yet. And so, I mean, it's going to take effort on, you know, everyone's part. We're going to be prepared with what do we want to talk to PrAC about, what is our goal, as opposed to just let's go sit around the table and, you know, what are you guys doing, what are we doing? I mean, there needs to be a thought process to make sure that we're managing everyone's time appropriately, because it is limited for all of us. And then, you know, there's going to be a staff side to that of you know, trying to improve that communication, and you know, it's going to take, you know, me and Pete. You know, we're going to have to go sit down with John Lewis. We're going to have to go sit down with Scott Archer and try and, you know, build that relationship. You know, in your, you know, you talk about wanting to see land use applications, and I forget the word that was used. I think I circled it. City activities. You know, this is one thing where, you know, trying to get an understanding of what the expectation is, because one person's activities may be bringing you the 99E project and the New Dune Drive, like John Lewis did, right? To have a discussion about that or an update on it, right? Someone else's perception of activities may be, you know, they're putting a water line across through a natural resource area, or they're increasing storm. I mean, so, you know, getting an understanding of what that means. It's a very, very general term, right? And so then that will help us know, okay, they're doing their water master plan. That needs to come to NRC and give them an update, right? They're doing a paving project on Main Street Extension. You know, that's city work. I don't think that necessarily. I mean, my interpretation would be that doesn't need to come here. That's not a policy discussion. That is implementing work, and so, you know, as I've read through this, I think there's a lot of things that we can do that would maybe help with an understanding of the form of government that we have in Oregon City. You know, land use regulations. We have a land use 101. I think that would probably be helpful to come to just walk through. You know, natural resource overlay district. I know code is the most, you know, not the most exciting but just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, especially if, you know, right now I believe that we are sending via email our transmittals for land use applications. You know, I've run into, you know, like a perception that we sit up in the planning office and we negotiate these outcomes. You know, we are driven by the code, and we're somewhat mandated in what we have to do. And so, you know, people get frustrated because, well, we want 40 trees replaced. Well, the code says they put back 10. You know, well, why are you just ignoring me? And so, just to make sure, as a body that is going to be looking at that we're all on the same page. And I think those are things that I see. And maybe you guys are already comfortable with it, and we don't need to do that. But just reading through it and trying to come up with ideas for the education to make sure that we're all on the same page are things that I've looked for, that I've kind of identified, because those are big responsibilities. But I think as we go through this, we can kind of talk about that a little bit.
So are you saying, Tony, that these goals that we've adopted have flaws, or you'd like to see them refined, or what are you saying?
Well, I think I think that there's probably some discussion that has to happen, because when I read them, I want to make sure I understand what your intent is, because, you know,
Well, Mr. Chair,
some of these are pretty limited, right? And
Yeah.
you can drive a semi through them.
Well, that's exactly what I was
Right.
going to ask you, and that is, I mean, as you see, we've taken the approach so far that those 5 goals in the bylaws are fairly general. I mean, do you think that's the best way to do this, or should there be more specificity at that level?
I think I'm okay with the goal. If I may, while we're talking here, I'd like to just hand out the Parks and Rec goals. I think they're just a good example to just to look at.
Now, is this a work plan or just kind of a list of goals?
This is their work plan.
Okay.
Yes,
Is this their work plan or their goals?
their work plan.
There's a difference.
I understand that. Yeah.
So which is it that you're passing out, their goals or
Says
their work plan?
goals.
They
We're
are
on it.
their goals
Thank you.
for 2014, which
All
is
right.
essentially what they are trying to accomplish. So it is serving as both.
And do they update their goals every year, or what do they do?
I'd have to talk to Scott to see how much they're updated. I would imagine that as things get completed, they fall off and they add new things.
Okay.
Like, for example, is Blue Heron came on, or Willamette Falls Legacy Project, that was relatively new. I'm sure that was added recently. Newell Creek Canyon with the purchase and the opportunity to do the planning out there, I imagine that's relatively new. I know we've been talking about off-leash dog parks for a couple of years, so I don't have all of the previous years. And when I read through this, kind of the work plan for NRC, I think what I noticed is that there were some things in there that were almost like reminders of staff to do. Like, for example, Willamette Falls Legacy Project or Blue Heron, right? Like, I give Scott an update, he takes it to Prac, and he reads it to him, right? So I see that as something that's more of an update type of thing versus, getting land use applications. We're going to continue to send you land use applications versus actual projects. I when I was reading this, I got a sense that some of this was reminders that this is what we'd like to see. We want to be updated on land use applications. We want to be updated on Blue Heron. We want to be updated on the Cove project. We want to be involved in it, right? But really, there's not anything going on right now with those, so there's no action to be taken other than us as staff to update you on where we're at in the process, right? But then we had actual projects like the bus tour. That was an actual project that we would budget for and complete. And so, I was trying to decipher out between actual things that we would be doing or producing something or spending money on versus other things that I saw more administrative at this point. And so I don't know if I'm explaining that very well.
I think so.
But I kind of saw a difference in your list here in your work plan. And so I think it was trying to break it out of kind of targeting in on what are the actual projects we want to do versus there's a lot of stuff that we're gonna pass you information. We're going to update you on things, and that's not really a project or a work plan product.
Well, if I could just kind of speak to it in the order, I think part of what we're looking particularly at, like 3B and 3C, is members of the Natural Resources Committee have had like a active ongoing role when you come down to Clackamas Cove. So it's more, I think members have been taking more of an active role than simply getting an update from Pete.
An active role in doing
actually, the guys who have actually been involved with Clackamas Cove are probably in a better position to describe the range or the depth of the activities. That wasn't something I was involved with, but they have been. I don't know, Jerry, you want to speak?
Well, and Brian was involved, so was Richard heavily. We were just kind of monitoring how the project was going and then trying to encourage, I would say, a more stewarding kind of attitude, and I don't know where that stands now. A good question for me right now would be, since the project has been delayed so long, does it have to go through a complete plan review again? I think the answer I heard from Pete last meeting was yes. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, so that'd be time for us as individuals or members or a committee to give input. Is that true?
That would be the land use review phase kind of thing. And then,
so this is kind of, to me, this is a placeholder because right now there's nothing going on, right? We've got a DDA signed, they're working through, but we would give you an update, right? So
Sure.
example, the update would be they've got an application into BOLI to determine if fair wages have
Right.
to be applied, union wages have to be
Right.
applied or not.
Right.
So it really, we're just kind of in this holding pattern, right? At the moment.
But
So-
I think that the process stuff we're talking about is more than just simply passively kind of receiving an update from Pete. People have been providing ongoing input and at formal steps to have that opportunity to provide input. Same thing like Blue Heron. I thought in looking at the natural resource opportunities on site, we're not passively just getting information, but trying to provide input, ideas, suggestions. So I think it's more interactive than simply getting updates. But I think the key thing, if you look at 3B and 3C, is this word schedule, because part of it is if we're initiating certain projects or activities and we don't have finite capacity and time to do stuff, and the more lead time we have on when something like related to Blue Heron comes up or whatever, it's an agenda item, they might take a presentation. And so what we're trying to do in a sense is time management. So the longer lead time we have on when some of this stuff would be coming up, the better prepared we can be and put other things may not be related maybe on hold or just kind of balance the workload. So I think that's the whole idea of the schedule. is the more lead time we have knowing when something's coming up, the better we can look at the whole workload and figure out who's going to take lead on this as far as a committee member, and just to make sure the right things get done, and also trying to set priorities too, because if we don't know what's coming up and when, how do we prioritize the activities we take on?
So what are you asking exactly, Bob? I can't.
Well, no,
I'm not sure what you're asking.
No, I'm not really asking. Because what I'm pointing out is that the schedule, I think, is the key word in the work plan. With something like Blue Heron, if something's coming up, it's going to require some intensive review of printed information by us or whatever. The more time we have to do that, the better. I mean, the quality of our input's based on really how much time we have to prepare.
Well, I think you put your finger on an important point of at least the vision of most of the committee on what we're trying to do. And it's a combination of, the city bringing projects or requests to us, do this, work on this, give us advice on this, and some things where we're trying to be proactive, go out there, understand a project, and come back to the city and say, there's this issue looming out here that could become big, and we want to talk with you about it. I think we're trying to capture both of those kind of things.
I think that's true. I also say, after looking at what Tony passed out, this is really well done. The PRAC project, the first page to me kind of focuses their attention on projects that they're going to, projects or attitudes that they feel that they want to do. But look at page 2 for a minute. It's their goals, which were probably mandated at one point or created by them, and a vision statement that goes with them, mission, vision statement, and goal 1 through 5. We have 5 goals too. And then look at the PRAC goals that support the city goals. Remember we talked about that? That was going to be part of our work plan?
Yes.
Which needs to be either another category in there, but how does our 1 through 5 charge?
I'd like to comment.
Yes.
I noticed that the PRAC goals, along to supplement what you're saying,
Yes,
that the PRAC goals are project-based.
yes.
And I like the idea of focusing it on a project. So for example, Blue Heron site.
Right.
Our goal would be to review and provide input. And that's it. And then whatever comes up, that's what we would do, review and provide input, whether it's up front or on the backside or sideways or whatever, it wouldn't matter. So this is, I like that format and that it's tied to the city goals.
But don't you believe, if you look at their goals, 1 through 5, they're very similar in terms of wideness, broadness as ours.
Yes, but we
Right.
don't, ours aren't named on a project.
Right.
Ours are too, I like what we have, but I'm
do
in
too.
agreement when I look at the PRAC goals, that these are much more practical and
Well,
the
and-
scope helps us focus on, well, yes, we want to give this input.
By the way,
And
that,
where and how would be determined
Right.
based on the name of the project.
I believe
I like that.
our actions are basically their goals
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And our
Right.
actions, once further defined,
Right.
by the city as they come up,
Mm-hmm.
would be, something specific to work on.
That's pretty much the same as the
Yeah.
short term,
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
which seem to be very much time-based.
but I think the important point to remember is I believe, to recognize that page 1, first top page, is their goals they adopted for 2014, and they did that in March, it says. That's specific things that they wanted to work on. I really do like that third page, where the PRAC goals support the city goals. I think we need to, before we go to the city commission, do something similar. Yeah.
And also, we need to be better educated on what the city goals are. I believe we've been given a handout, but we need to take a look at that again.
Yeah. That booklet that was sitting on our counter.
Both that and the follow-up to it, which is to provide recommendations to the city on natural resource
Yeah.
issues that might be incorporated in the city's goals on the next round of goal setting.
So what would you suggest, Tony or Pete, at this stage, where we're at?
Well, I think probably what we need to do is actually dive in and go through the matrix that Bob's prepared.
And I think just before that, for example, on Oregon's natural resource bylaws, number 3, receive notice of and comment on land use applications and city activities that have the potential to impact natural resources in the city and its urban growth boundaries. Land use applications, I understand what that means. crystal clear. I guess, at some point I'd like to have a discussion is, do you really feel you should be commenting on those? But we can save that for another time. But city activities. I don't know what that means or when I'm supposed to send you something. I could see, so I'm not, and I'm just trying to just lighten the mood a little bit
That's
here.
fair.
Well, it could be-
City projects, right? So, or significant, I think it was completely appropriate to being the 99E project or the Dune project or, whenever we've done a master plan, but whenever somebody says activities, I get a little nervous because we may not bring you something that you would think is an activity that then you come back at me and say, hey, why didn't you bring this to us? And so trying to just get an understanding of what that means.
Well, is it simple enough to address that by scratching a line through activities and writing projects over it?
That's what I did. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
But these are yours. I'm just trying to explain as the administrator of this what I see and what I don't understand what I need clarification on.
But I think there's a different, you can have a legitimate activity, say something like a pesticide application. Let's just say there were some concerns expressed. It's not site-specific or time-limited. It could be a generalized city practice that maybe some members have some expertise, insights, or have some alternative approaches they may want to propose. So, it's not one site, one time. It could just be this is the way the city's done this, and maybe some best management practices or some other ways to consider something. So, the activity, obviously projects are self-contained, but there could be ways that cities does something that we might want to recommend some
That's
another-
exactly the key. I mean, the policy or the
There you go.
best practices document that oversees that. I mean, my sense is that ought to be our focus.
All right. You're saying in addition
That would
to,
depend on which department is doing the maintenance or whatever it is and where. So we have to drill down even further, focus in more on what that means.
I'm just commenting that I think our focus should be more on the policy or on the identification of practices than the
Yeah.
individual maintenance activity.
And I talked a little bit earlier about the role of how Oregon City is man. I mean, technically, if you look at their charter, right, the city commission is hire and fire the city manager, the city recorder, and they are responsible for policy. The city manager actually hires and fires everybody else, and they're responsible for the day-to-day management. Now, of course, that line gets blurred quite a bit, but the city commission doesn't come in and direct my counterperson how to answer the phone. And I know but I'm just trying to draw the example of, obviously there's going to be some times when the city commissioner has a concern about speeding down Lynn, right? Why aren't the police slowing people down? Just making something up. So it goes back and forth and raises concerns, but they don't go into the police department to the police chief and say, go put a car out on Lynn. They have no authority to do that. They go through the city manager. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, where do we fit in with the NRC? Is it in the day-to-day operations, or is it at the next level up in kind of these policy statements that then drive the day-to-day operations, right?
Well, ideally, the second one, but if there's an issue with how, say, parks are managed or public works managing land, maybe they're doing something that appears wrong to one of us or something. That it could, just like with the city council, they don't normally do the day-to-day stuff, but every once in a while the citizens ask for that to be done at a city council meeting. And but generally, designing effective policy is really the goal, I think, overall. And but if we see parks out there spraying the native plants, and leaving the non-native ones, for instance, that's just something I made up. But, that would be something in day-to-day operations that could be brought up if such a thing happened.
well, it seemed like the word policy was a strain here. In activities, I get the picture from what you were talking about. How about practices? City practices.
Well, that's basically what I just spoke about. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just suggesting a way to
Yeah.
get this thing resolved. I personally, I would have a hard time if we start revisiting the total change of these bylaws, because we spent a lot of time on this. I'm certainly willing to, as one member, support some changes where you think they're important. But, we spent a lot of time on this. And the work plan needs, of course, more attention, but
Well, I
there are
think-
other places that are problematic.
Bob's, headings are still good because, they're tying back to the initial responsibility.
Yeah, I think
Well,
it's a
they
good
are the
structure
initial
in itself.
responsibility
Yeah,
is abbreviated.
yeah. Okay.
I wonder if we haven't just hit on something kind of important that's, I'm kind of backing this up from the details that we're talking about, but it loomed kind of big to me, that this idea of talking about best practices, which is a part of policies, of course, but, it's how you do things when you go out there and you're going to spray, or you're going to clear land, or you're going to remove trees or whatever. Have you got some list of best practices for how you should approach this that you should look at or not? I mean, I think in the best of all worlds, the city would have a series of best practices, and again, just thinking out loud, that's a place where advisory committees can be really helpful. And I can imagine not only us generating draft best practices and working with you, I can imagine processes where in certain areas, just pull something out of the air in something that affected cities' parklands, where either PrAC would develop a draft and we would review it, or we'd develop a draft and they would review it, and then it'd go on to you. Seems like that sort of thing would be a real good use of advisory committees to me, and starts to get to this question: how do you work across program lines?
How do we make sure
Well,
everyone's input is
I could see
incorporated?
where that would be very useful if the city had, and I don't know if you do or not, and I don't know anything about pests other than what I do around our rentals or our house or whatever. But if the city had some kind of an integrated pest management program that went across all departments, and you were developing that program, and all of a sudden you would like to have some comments from the Natural Resource Committee, I would see where that would be appropriate.
I agree.
Or something like that.
I believe about a year ago, the county came up with a very well-developed integrated pest management program. And that was, I mentioned that to the city. I don't know if it was ever formally adopted by the city or is in use. So that's keeps the city from having to develop the whole thing. Which
Brian,
is,
that actually was presented here by a county person, and we agreed as a group to support that and advocate that the city adopted. I don't know what happened after that. But.
Yeah, I guess my point is, if the city wanted to come back and ask us specifics about it, then I think it would be appropriate for us to comment as a group or individually or whatever. But, us trying to get into specific activities that various departments have in the city seems to me not appropriate. I think that if there's an issue with the integrated pest management plan, then maybe we should bring it to someone's attention, but somebody has to come back to us, I believe, and ask for comments.
I certainly think where you're talking about, where we're starting something, and it's like, oh, this is something the NRC should certainly comment on.
Yeah.
I think that flow is pretty straightforward in what we're used to.
Yeah.
The harder one is when it's something that you guys would like to initiate that is multiple departments citywide. If
Yeah.
it's coming up with how are we going to get all the right players, A, bought in, and then B, to the table, right? Because not only is it not on my work plan, most likely, but it's not on parks or so how do we do that, right? And I think that's the part that's been missing that we need to work on, to figure out the best way to do that. And then and let's just say Public Works goes, I've got a sewer moratorium, a sewer master plan, a water master plan. I have no staff left. I don't have time for this. Then what do we do? Do we park it?
Yeah.
I want to avoid the frustration of, well, why aren't they doing this? And so how do we handle it? Do we say, okay, well let's park this. Maybe we can get it on the city commission goals for the next work session or next biennium, or we'll revisit this in 6 months, maybe, or after they adopt the moratorium, maybe we can have that conversation.
Okay, but right now, you're talking in generalities, and, if somebody's got something specific that they would like us to work on, I'd like to hear what it is. What is there something specific that we can identify right now that's, where we can take back to the city?
Right, and I guess before,
I
and I agree. So I guess in response to yours, that was the only thing that I circled on your goals. The only other thing that I wanted to clarify was initiate recommendation and review updates to the city's comp plan codes and policies. I don't have a problem with that, but this is another one where we're compliant with all of our statewide planning goals, all of our metro requirements, our comprehensive plan is in compliance. So it's not just something we just go out and do. It's like, hey, let's update, goal 2. I think that if it's a recommendation that we take to the city commission, that maybe we should look at our comprehensive plan. While I don't have a problem with it being in here, I don't want it to be an expectation that every 3 months we're going to come in here and go, let's do dark skies, let's do upland habitat, let's rewrite natural resource overlay district.
Well, I think we understood that.
Okay,
actually.
all right. I just
it
wasn't
was
sure.
our belief that the city was about to take another look at.
Okay,
its
then I
comprehensive
certainly
plan.
agree that comes.
I mean, if
here.
you tell us that doesn't
we didn't
fit in
come
our
up with
work
this
plan for
ourselves.
the next 12 or 18 months,
Right.
I think we're willing to accept that
Fair enough.
observation.
Okay. Fair enough. So that was the only thing that I had circled was
Thank
issues
you.
versus project.
Thank you. Okay.
So maybe then we kind of dive into the work plan itself.
Well, I guess, are there any more questions just kind of like about the format and, like what deliverables?
Well, I believe
or-
what's missing is the relationship to the city's goals, and I see that real strongly in the third page of PrAC's stuff.
I think what I like about PrAC, it's concise, it's project related to the appropriate department, and it's manageable. I mean, this is a manageable list.
Tony, I've got one question for you. The PrAC work plan, how, you talk about kind of being in sync in department work plans. Is there a relationship between how the department work plan gets developed on an annual basis and PrAC's work plan? So if PrAC would be making demand on department resources, it's known in advance?
There's obvious coordination here, knowing
Okay.
what Scott's working on and what their goals are right here. There is. I know that he's working on, trying to figure out phase 2 of Wesley Lynn Park. They purchased that property a while ago behind Wesley Lynn. They've been kicking around ideas. So I know there's been the RV master plan. I don't know how many pre-ups I've had with them. I mean, I know that's something that they've been trying to accomplish.
So to optimize the effectiveness of this work plan, it would be great to have this kind of in sync of the development of annual work plans within departments. To have
I think the work plan needs to be in sync with departments that are being impacted.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I'm
I
saying.
agree.
Yeah,
Which is difficult because, this could be multiple.
Yeah, well,
departments.
the first limiting factor is it's got to involve natural resources, and there's plenty of city activity that doesn't,
Right.
and we're not concerned with that, and we have to stick to what our focus is. But go ahead.
Might I suggest that we consider reviewing page 1 for their adopted goals, and to use those perhaps as a framework for us to consider if these really are vetted projects that are in development, which ones tie to NRC work, and that those become a place where we can naturally begin to develop a work plan.
And I think there'd be areas where you can meet with them about similar.
I mean, that might be a good place to start.
Are you saying, Ginger, move away from this draft to a different format, or what are you, I don't quite
We
understand.
can reformat perhaps the column where we would change the label of one of the columns to be projects underway, ties to natural resources, and then use some of these. We don't have to work on all of these things because there's a lot. But if we identify some that we're willing to work on for Natural Resource Committee outcomes, that we make them
Well, like for example, Willamette
Action.
Falls Legacy Project. That's
Yeah.
already on your list.
Yes.
And
Right.
it's on their list.
And it's on
So,
their list.
A natural tie.
So it would be, I don't know if we call it projects or if we call it goal focus or focus, or, I mean, I don't know
Well-
exactly
Well-
yet, but
Well, he's
My-
got like 1A, B, C, and so on, and those are, I think, were intended to be a project in each line going across.
Yes.
And then you can add D and C,
Well,
you know.
Brian,
so on.
there's more than that. As I believe this subcommittee worked on this, 1A1 is goal 1 relationship. 2 is goal 2 relationship.
Exactly,
All right.
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
But I was just talking about one,
okay.
that's,
I
1A
like,
is
I
one
like,
project.
I like the tie to the goal.
right.
Do you like
exactly.
does the committee like the tie to the goal?
Exactly,
That's a fundamental question.
yes.
Okay,
Could I
good.
make a suggestion that might help simplify this a little bit? A lot of this, when you get beyond kind of like the first page, where stuff's ongoing or whatever, we don't necessarily have to come up with a lot of new content, because stuff like initiate recommendations, a comprehensive plan, you know, that's just kind of an ongoing thing, but we don't have to make a lot of decisions about that tonight.
Yeah, if it's going to be a year or two before the comprehensive plan is looked at, then it's low priority for this year, and we'll mark it as that, but it's something that
Should-
keep in mind
should
for the
still be on
future,
the-
may move up the ladder as the city gets more involved with doing that.
Well, to clarify to you, Tony, kind of how we were thinking about that, because we actually specifically talked about that one in that way. It's sort of, we're asking Pete and you and others to, once we've identified some of these, tell us what the right time frame is, you know?
So is
and
this-
if with that one, the time frame is 2 years out.
Is this kind of like the parking lot list?
Yes.
This is everything we
Yes.
can think
It's,
of.
it's everything we
Now
know
we
of
need
that
to-
might come
now
up
we need
in the
to-
next
now we
1 to
need-
2 years.
So I guess my next question is, are now we refining this
Well,
to a goal statement?
Well,
To our,
it-
our work plan for this year? Or,
That's the
because
goal.
right here, there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 things on here.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're revising it to a goal statement, but I think what you said is fair, that it's a list of things that we understand we might be engaged in over this period, and now we're hoping you and others can tell us if some of those ought to be pushed off because we really wouldn't put time into them for a while, and are there some other things, like maybe 1 or 2 we pick off of the prac list that ought to be inserted.
Well, I guess what I'm going to say is, even if all 21 of these were going to happen in my 2-year budget biennium, I can't do all 21 of
Right.
them. So we need to prioritize what we want to do, right? So,
Right.
so
And
then
we're looking for
I
your
think-
input.
Right. Okay.
What are the hot ones
Yep.
for the city? What are you going to be putting your
Yep.
time?
Could we-
So what should we focus on?
Okay.
If we could backtrack just for a second, though, I think while there, you know, the overall, there's a lot of numbers here and a lot of things, this is still just going back to the responsibilities that we identified and adopted. And the reason some of this, the total number of columns is so large is simply because we included multiple things under the same heading. So, you know, we lumped together stuff like code review, we lumped together land use, you know, so it's all one responsibility area. And all I did in formatting this was separate it out because they're not exactly the same activity. So that's why there's so many of them. But when we adopt 5 or 6 at the last meeting.
There was,
Right.
So that,
But and when I looked at those, and that was kind of like develop a job description for a natural resource position. Is that the 5 that you're thinking?
It was the 5 columns were actually the responsibility areas, and we based that back on really kind of the direction we got from the city. I mean, you know, these were the things that we understood were the
Article
things that
4
we're
in the
supposed to be
bylaws.
undertaking
Yeah,
in the
Article 4 in the
bylaws.
bylaws are called responsibilities. And I think that probably that's potential confusion with people reading it because they don't know that they're directly tied to the bylaws.
Yeah, but basically, the stuff in the first column are just abbreviations of the bylaws that we already spent a lot of time on reviewing
Well,
and adopting.
yeah.
So, you know,
But I
these
guess
are-
I think that goes back to projects versus just administrative, right? I think updating you on land use applications is not a project. It's not a work product. It is something we will forward you land use applications, and if you have the ability to comment on them or you desire to, you will.
And that's why it's identified as ongoing. So it's not something that we're devoting extra resources to, but if it's something that may be requested of us, it may take some time, we just want to acknowledge it in the work plan so that, you know, we try and understand the total workloads of the discretionary stuff plus the stuff that's expected of us. So if we figure out how much the expected stuff, how much resource and time that's going to take. It helps guide us on how much discretionary things we can undertake, because that's really what's left over.
But I heard a really important other thing here I don't want to lose, and I thought Tony was right on it, and that is in our attempt to understand what's the whole universe of what we might focus on, we've got a bunch of things here that Tony characterized as perhaps ones that are on the city's plate, but you just don't have the resources, and you're not going to move forward on them in the next 1 to 2 years. Well, if we know that, well, that tells us a lot about how we might modify those pieces of this work.
Essentially, I could see, here are the ones, here's what we all can agree we can accomplish, and this is what we want to take forward, right? But we know we have all this other stuff, right, that either we have responsibilities for, or we'd like to revisit at some point, or we want to make sure it gets at least consideration with budgeting time, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like the second list.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, sure.
Because I just want to make it, I'm trying to make it clean and concise, right? That we can all agree on, and this is what we're going to focus on.
Right.
But there's always going to be good ideas.
Sure, there's always other stuff.
There's always other stuff that may be something that we agreed on, becomes a new priority and something gets pulled, right? But I just want to set the expectation fairly for you and us, because I'm worried that if I have a list of 21, I know I can't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
But,
And so what
we
can
get
do?
the same problem in miniature, you understand?
Yep.
I mean, there's only so many hours in our little volunteer day, too. So
Yep.
we want to be sure we're doing a good job of prioritizing on what we really need to spend our attention on.
And so, do we want to start just walking through 1A? Start with.
Well, do you know what, I'm going to throw out just an alternative suggestion, just maybe for efficiency's sake. What I'm doing is I'm not going numerical order, but I look at something like the last page, okay? If you look at 5A, B, C, and C2, those were things we spent a lot of time on, and I'm not sure if you just go through 5 there, that there's any of those that we're taking off the plate, because this is what we've been talking about. I mean, stuff like coordinate with PRAC, planning, and city commission on at least an annual basis. I don't know at this point if that's really optional or if that's not a core thing that we're supposed to be about. And so I guess I'm saying is to re-identify the core things that we know
Are just gonna happen.
They're gonna
They have to
happen.
Yes.
They're not really work plan products. They just have to happen.
Well, for us, it's a work plan, though. If we're going to meet with PRAC, we've got to set up a date for it. We've got to figure out an agenda. We've got to go to another meeting, the whole bit. So
we're
for
gonna
us,
do.
yeah, for us, it's kind of a work plan item. But all I'm suggesting is if we did nothing more tonight than identify the things that are fixed or we know are going to happen, then what you've got left are kind of the discretionary things, and then you can figure out what's reasonable, rational, and possible to undertake. But what we have here is a mix of discretionary things and things that are kind of fixed.
Well, I understand exactly where you're coming. Yeah. I think
that-
that's kind of what I'm calling administrative versus product. I think we're kind of the
Yeah,
same thing.
it's just, are people comfortable maybe with that approach if we highlight the things we are really, committed to doing that pretty much have to take place? And then we can
Yeah, that'd
figure out
be
what to do with
an
the
easy
others.
way to
Well,
limit
Kind
our
of what you
focus.
call
You know,
prioritization.
Yeah,
well,
but
that's the whole, really the whole goal is to do the prioritization. This just has low, medium, high, and, I've worked on other ones where it's a scale of 1 to 10, and,
Yeah.
Everybody votes
Everybody vote and
their
high man
number,
wins.
and,
Yeah.
That'd be a good way to do
Well,
it.
Yeah, actually, it's a very good way, because low, medium, and high, you always end up saying, well, this was in between low and medium, but if you can say 3, that's a little easier.
But I guess just before we go ahead,
Yeah.
Richard. I keep jumping.
I guess I have a problem with the matrix, and I have from the beginning, because I don't think the matrix is really functional. If I were doing this, in the consulting business, which I'm not in now, but I'd probably take out in a situation like this. I would take out outcomes, evaluation criteria, probably leave in resources needed and primary staff and members on the NRC responsible for carrying out the various activities. And maybe low, high, and medium, we might prioritize things, perhaps. That should be really easy to do.
Yes.
But then you get back over to the left side on the action timeline, And the actions are kind of projects that we're talking about here. And it seems to me if we need to add in more projects, we need to be talking about that, not the administrative side of the matrix per se, but talk about specifics. What do you exactly want to do here? You've got blanks, for example. And it seems to me the actions that are in here are pretty self-explanatory. Conduct annual NRC tour, Jerry Herman. A date, probably a date. Then on 2A, comprehensive plan revision schedule. Well, that depends on the city to tell us when that's going to happen. Code revisions and right down the line here. I mean, all these things are fairly self-explanatory in my view. And we just need to be told
Well, I
when
think
those things are going to happen.
It's interesting. For like example, under code revisions, what I wrote was what
Yeah.
is the so I think it's
Well,
exactly what you're
it-
talking about. Which part, or
Yeah,
is that
but-
a recommendation can be forwarded, or
But there's
But
two
we can-
parts to that, though. I think the city needs to tell us
Right.
what we need to be doing because we're an advisory committee to the city. But on the other hand, there are certain members here, me included, on the committee that think, that, well, maybe we ought to be looking at some other things the city hasn't asked us to look at.
Right.
And so we need to bring those to
Right.
the city's attention.
And so I think, so for example, on this one that we're talking about city code, like right now,
Yeah.
I have no city commission directive to change code. I have no project or funding right now. I'm not in periodic review, right? So coming from me down, from the city down, like I said, I think we completely understand how to do that one. It's the flip one when you guys want to look at something.
Yeah.
And how much time and money do we invest in energy in rewriting something before we have buy-in from the city commission, right? Or
Yeah.
we think we should look at adopting a dark skies ordinance for lighting. Okay, so before we write anything, I would think that should go to the city commission and see if it's something they want to do or not,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yep.
And so, as I'm trying to figure out how do we process this,
Yeah.
because like I said, city to you guys is easy. It's the other way
Yeah.
when it's out of the blue and no one's thought about it, and it's a new project. So how do we do that?
Just
we
like
ha-
so
we-
much of what we're doing, communication is the key here. If we can communicate to the city that, hey, we're thinking of the dark sky, we do have a board member that's very interested in that.
Right.
But,
Yes.
And that board member has a boilerplate number of
yeah, but
code
you know,
language.
But
I
when
don't-
is the city going to be ready?
But I think there needs to be some agreement that I would have hard time spending resources without buy-in from the commission that's what
That's
we should do.
understandable.
Well,
Even
we
if
all-
I've
we all
got a
understand that part of
boilerplate,
it.
the amount of effort that goes into changing code is extensive and expensive.
We probably need more than one commissioner to be interested.
I would agree with that too, that there needs to be some way to vet
Maybe three.
proposals. I would assume at least a majority would be preferable for me. So.
Well, God knows I'm not trying to play politics here,
It was
but,
even better.
just to talk about it more generally, I mean, I guess I see that we could bring ideas or concerns to you, and if you agree that they are looming issues and ones that might require some focus, well, I mean, we might then follow through on whatever kind of product you might want from us, and then you might use that as part of the mechanism of asking the city council whether that would be a future area of focus.
And we touched a little bit on this when you met with David and the mayor about,
Yeah.
we need to have a package ready that we want to take October, November in
Yes.
preparation for budget season. Right?
You talked about that a bit.
we
and
start-
we're
we-
ready to do that.
We start writing directors start preparing our budgets around that time. We got the retreat, in January, and then budget committee rolls out after that. So I mean, we've got a 6-month lead time that we need to get rolling on. So, larger things that are larger projects, I think that's how we do that. It's tough mid-budget year. If it's something very compelling, we could try to go in there and do budget amendments and whatnot. But really, that's the time I think we need to
Sure.
focus on right now as to, once we get through this and start thinking about what do we need or what do we want to do.
Since we're on that one right now, I mean, just to, I don't mean
Go
to
ahead, go ahead.
hurry on past this, Ginger, but I want to capture one thing, and that's, we talked about this at our meeting on Monday too, and I think we've discussed it before here, and we all agree and we're ready to do that, but I've heard 2 or 3 different dates. What would be your 2 cents worth for when we ought to have a draft to give to you?
Oh, probably. I mean, I'm comfortable assuming that Wyatt doesn't change the timing of when we do things. Historically, we are, by end of October is usually enough time, because then we, are pretty much finalizing things by November, December. At that point, to start selling it up, to David. Yeah. So.
Tony, something would be helpful, I think, in a way, because staff time is a finite resource, is if we can get any guidance as we're looking for the work plan, is if we were doing something that was going to involve staff, and obviously if staff are working on something with us here, they're not doing something somewhere else, but if we can get any kind of sense of what staff time might be available overall, just get a sense of like what, beyond kind of administrative stuff of helping, put together these meetings and attending these meetings, what's a realistic expectation of access to staff time, during it, because that would help us guide or figure out, we might really want to do this, but we don't have a lot of time to do it, and there's no staff time to do it, so maybe it's not practical to undertake within this time frame. But how do we get, as trying to put stuff together, how do we get a handle on what's available to us from the city?
That's an excellent question. And I don't have
And your answer is?
That's a lot.
My answer is Pete's on comp time right now, and
It's really,
I forced him to take the next 4 Fridays off. So
it's kind of project specific,
understand.
and it's based on staff times available, based on what's going on at the time and the priorities. I mean,
it
it's
is.
like,
We've been very, through this downturn, we've been able to tackle Blue Heron, the South End concept plan, start the sign code, right? I wouldn't have been able to do those things concurrently if it was 2004. So it really does ebb and flow based on, we are primarily private development driven with our fees. We're trying to carve out staff time. It's not ideal. I can't say I can promise you a half FTE or a quarter FTE. I mean, in some months, it's easier than others. Depending on what it is, it may take more staff time or less. So, the commitment is that we've got staff here, and we will do our best to try and meet the goals. And that, if it's a complex project, either it's going to take a little longer, or we are going to have the availability to absorb it. I mean, if it's something over the top, I'll come in and tell you.
Okay.
I just don't have the ability.
We'll count on it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean,
Fair enough.
it's,
I have
it's,
a
so, it's so
suggestion.
case by case.
I have a suggestion based on everything that we've heard, that we move forward on our annual work plan to focus on 1, 4, and 5, because those are the things that we actually have control over at this point.
Yeah.
That we can move forward with, and that we leave 2 and 3 to be more of the looking for, that we track things and then we respond to things when the city needs us to do things, like the railroad trestle project and things along that line. But we still track those things, and if there's something that pops up as we're tracking issues for 2 and 3, that we bring those up at the beginning or notify the city.
Yeah,
But it seems like 1, 4, and 5 is our meat right now, what we can really do.
Where we have some
Until the next
discretion or
raining.
choice. Where we have some discretion or choice.
Right.
exactly.
I agree with what you've said, though I can't help but comment that in doing that, of course, you leave out some specific projects we know are moving ahead.
Yes.
And we know at some point
Yes.
we should play a review role in, like Blue Heron and
Right,
Clackamas
yeah, that's why
Yeah,
we
but-
would
But aren't you going
review
to catch
it.
that through the land use anyway?
Right, right.
That's where your role
Yeah.
is, I think, at this point, right? Because we're done with the master planning, we're done with the visioning for the most part. The next step is the land use document, and you're already going to receive land use documents. So I guess I would say, if this was a year and a half ago, maybe we're having a different discussion because we're still just doing our public engagement and rolling out the project. But at this point, we're really we're waiting for a land use document is where we're at.
Oh, sure.
And-
I mean, we've got to, this triggering review means we got to have something to review,
And I mean,
as you're saying.
yeah, and
So Ginger, in suggesting eliminating 2 and 3, that's what I heard,
Moving it
Say
to,
eliminate.
no,
from
no.
consideration at this time, that's what I
Or
heard.
focusing on 1 and, well, 4 is what we're doing now. But
Okay.
1 and 5 are where we can actually do some work between now and the end of this biennium. Because everything else in 2 and 3 has been done, they've already been set for the year. So we will still respond and review and fulfill our obligations and responsibilities there when those things are brought to us.
Yes.
And
Okay.
track and notice things that
All
are
right.
not brought to us. But we focus on 1 and 5. And set those wheels in motion and decide what we want to accomplish between now and the end of biennium.
Is that where the priority would come, then,
Mm-hmm.
like high priority for one, those? and
What
so forth?
activities in
Yeah.
1 and what activities in 5, and,
Do you know, if I could suggest one thing, though, in setting the priorities, I found if you have a work plan, but there's nobody who really is going to take lead on doing something, a lot of times it doesn't get done. So I think if somebody's going to advocate or champion, like for a particular activity, we really want to
Right.
identify at least a member or 2 or however many members of this group.
We want to use the template, so.
Right.
Yeah, just to make it happen.
Yeah.
So like for example, let's just say 3B, Blue Heron, site review schedule, Pete Walter. Outcome, staff provides updates on projects and opportunity to comment on land use application. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that's where it's at.
Right.
There's not a whole lot more, unless
Yeah.
you want to go do
Well,
something.
I think it comes back to Richard's comment about action and timeline really is not critical to this document, isn't that what I heard you say? You thought there were several categories that, on matrix that were valuable, but several that weren't.
Yeah, to me, the evaluation criteria, I'm not sure what that means
Yep.
here.
All right,
And the resources needed, that is appropriate, I think.
all right.
On the other hand, that could be primary staff and members. I mean, those two might be able to be combined. I'm not sure what the intent of having them separate was. Maybe there was, resources mean something else.
Well, there'd be dollars, staff time,
Could be information, too.
things like that, and information.
Well, that's not, dollars. We don't deal with dollars.
Well, sometimes we do, if it's something that requires the city to spend money on.
Yeah, but we don't deal with dollars, though.
Well, not directly.
No, so I don't think, to
But-
me, that's not an issue there. But
We
whatever-
could need money, though, to implement something. We talked about like a urban
Well-
forester or something like that. That's a budgetary item if something we're advocating for that would have a budget impact.
Right, but that's not, we're not coming up with that dollar figure. That's a higher pay grade, We're making the recommendation that
That's true.
somebody be, that a position be created, for whatever reason, And to me, it's not, I don't think our function is a budgetary one, to consider the cost of it. The cost of it will be considered by others.
But they're going to ask us where the money's coming from.
The money's available. Pardon?
They're going to ask us where the money, if we say, we have to have an urban forestry or whatever, department heads are going to come back and say to us, where's the money, whose budget and how much money, how is this going to get funded? I think.
Well, I don't think they're going to ask us that, because we don't have the expertise to answer that question.
Right,
No,
or
that's
even
not
to
us.
make that kind of a recommendation, that's
You know,
not our scope of
we-
our work.
We have to be aware of that, but the city staff and city council needs to decide, is the money there and can we spend it? So,
At least if we acknowledge, there's going to be an impact, because, it's
Well,
being
yeah,
taken
we-
seriously.
well, yeah, it's obvious that hiring a major position like that will cost money and add to the size of the city budget, but we're not the one to pin that down.
No, and this isn't a hypothetical discussion, because what I'm presuming is when we prepare our budget priorities and natural resources and forward them in the fall to Tony, that they might well include a proposal for a position or a part of a position on the city staff. But I don't think that would rise or fall based on what we say about the costs. To the degree we're contributing to that debate is how good a job we do of laying out what's it good for, what's the benefit of it, why is the city better off by having it.
Why is it
I
needed?
think
that's
the
the
only
role
place
we play.
budget would really, like for example, a couple of years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, the city commission had a request that the Natural Resource Committee look at revegetating the spit between Clackamas Cove and the Clackamas River, and they had budgeted $25,000 for that. right? So, that may have been an interesting fact of, we've got 25 grand to spend, right? But I think I see it coming more like from me down rather than you telling me how much the foresters, HR is going to tell me what the comp study is on community forestry.
Well, that
rates.
was in response to concern about severe erosion, I think, and somebody was trying to figure out, put some money into some block for somebody to do something, but probably nothing came of that anyway. Is that true?
No, the Natural Resources decided they didn't want to do that. They wanted to look at a hydrology study of the whole Clackamas River, which I don't have funds for.
Yeah.
So we
But
pulled it.
that could be a question to
Right.
us. Could be, here's our problem.
Yep.
We're trying to make progress on these issues. We've only got this much money.
Yep.
What's
Here's-
your recommendation
here's
about
the pool to
priorities
play with
here?
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you could ask us that question.
I don't think money was kind of the primary thing under resources needed. I think we're just trying to identify anything that would be like non-staff, non-volunteer time that would help facilitate, successfully implementing the activity or whatever. So
Okay.
it's kind of a catch-all.
I think we need to dive into this.
Could I ask a question about
Sure.
5A? If you could go over to 5A. Now, this is really a practical situation here, I think. Joint meeting with PrAC to reconcile the bylaw requirements. First of all, would they want to change their bylaws to include an annual meeting with NRC,
Okay,
like we are required to have
Okay,
with them?
just to get everybody up to date, I did meet with PrAC last year and talked with they agreed that it's a good idea to, to have an interface because there's issues that concern both of us. And so, they have agreement that we ought to do this, but they don't have it in their bylaws like we do. And either they should add it to their bylaws or we should take it out, one or the other. But they wanted to meet again in the future, but that hasn't been arranged. I don't know if they have that, since they don't have it in their bylaws, if they have it in their minds right now that that needs to happen.
Well, let
But
me ask the hard question, though, Brian.
Yeah.
They don't have to have it in their bylaws to meet with us. do they?
No, they don't.
They have all kinds of things that aren't in their bylaws. If they're willing to meet with us,
They're
it's
willing
just
to
a
meet.
matter of scheduling the meeting.
Right.
So we should.
That's true. That's true.
That sounded pretty simple, didn't it?
Yeah.
I guess,
and,
do we want to kind of circle back to this? I guess I'll just throw out there, there's a couple of things. I already threw out there land use training. That's up
Yeah.
to you guys to decide if you want to get more informed on that or not.
Well, could I interject something there? I would love to have the Land Use 101 again. We've had it once.
Yes,
and,
I would too.
And maybe twice, actually,
Yes.
if I recall. It's always great, but I think the conflict comes when I say we, NRC in general, think that maybe the city should be doing certain natural resource activities, or excuse me, let me back up a second. The city should not allow certain natural resource activity destruction to occur on certain developments, even though it's allowed in the
That's
code.
correct.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we kind of come to loggerheads sometimes,
Yep.
a little bit. And I prefer, I'm kind of a purist, I suppose, from the point of view of here's the code, here's what it says, this is what we're supposed to do or not supposed to do. I look at it that way. But on the other hand, if there are activities that we can suggest that might lead to code changes to further protection of natural resources as needed, then that's good,
So more of the policy discussion of is
Yes.
the code succeed.
Yeah.
So I guess that gets back to my question. Do you really see your role as commenting on every land use application that comes in that's required to comply with the code that's adopted?
Personally,
I don't.
I do not either.
No, neither did I.
But
Yeah.
on the other hand, what it
However,
allows us to do is to get an overview of what is happening to determine whether or not we want to pursue certain code changes
Right.
Right.
or suggest pursuing certain code changes.
Right.
It does it from that point of view to me. But I'm not interested in reviewing every land use application just because it's a land use application. I would be more interested in seeing, just trying to get a picture in my mind
Of what our
what's going
code
on.
is,
Yeah,
what happens if you follow our code?
yeah.
Isn't our code based on state? rules?
A
So
lot
we
of it
didn't-
is driven by state, yeah.
So even if there was a code that we adopted that we thought, well, we notice how this is being implemented, maybe we should make a suggestion, it might be based on a state code that you can't change because the state law allows it.
Yeah,
So
I think you can kind of think of it like, the state code is pretty broad, right? And then it gets, maybe Metro will add nature in the neighborhoods or healthy habitat, and it gets a little bit more refined. And then we kind of, there's a lot of ways to put it together to comply with the overall objective. So you certainly couldn't get into a position, which I doubt this commission would do, where they go, we're not really worried about, intermittent streams. We're not going to regulate them anymore. I don't see you guys going there. So you couldn't go to the other side
Right,
of
right, right,
regulation.
right.
I see us constantly building on it. So I'm pretty comfortable. If there's something you saw, we could certainly have a conversation about it. I mean, if it was something way out there, I would certainly remind, hey, we want to have 400-foot buffers around intermittent streams. I go, hey, now wait a minute, time out. Get a little extreme here in terms of exactions and justification in the law. So, as long as we're approaching it from a rational basis, we can usually justify it. Well, sure.
I think
Well,
we're
that's
talking
the
about
importance of the dialogue, I think. Very early on, you can tell us, well, this one you're going to hit this wall right here. This one, on the other hand, there's, it's something that's going to need attention in the future, and maybe your input on it's useful. I
Yeah.
mean,
So I think that
You,
is
me.
not only with the commissions, but even general citizen comments. I talked a little bit about this earlier. We send out all of ours to David Evans. I think Pete told you this, to do our review to implement our code. They have wetland specialists over there that come up with the conditions, make sure it complies. We obviously then review it as well. And it's always that one of whether it be natural resource or a subdivision or a building, I want them to do X, Y, Z, except the code says A, B, C, right? And it's well, why don't you just make them do it? We're the public and we demand we want this. Well, because, we've all agreed to these rules. Now, if X, Y, Z were the code, we can do that, but we can't just go in and negotiate individually with each one. So I appreciate where you're coming from, where, it's more focusing on, is the code doing what we want it to do, rather than, God, I wish we could just make them do this.
Yeah.
Right? Why won't you just make them put this down? Well, because we're not required to. Right?
And I think we appreciate that. We're trying to figure out, are there
How do we do it?
soft spots here? Well, are there soft spots here, first of all, that are creating a big adverse natural resource effect? And, and then we want to put a big yellow circle around those, and then have a dialogue about, are there ways codes could be modified that would address that problem?
Right. Yeah. Okay. The other things, I have, Pete's taken the lead on Tree City USA. Obviously, you guys, tree subcommittee, it's part of our heritage tree ordinance. You review that. We had to have a tree subcommittee in order to be a Tree City USA city. Pete's done a great job working with the school on, kind of our Arbor Day obligation. I wish I would have brought it in. I have a flyer, 4-page spread from Lake O of their, Arbor Month activities. So is that something you guys think you should or want to, or have any, and I'm just throwing ideas out, right? David asked me to come up with some
That'd be a
ideas of what you guys can do or to bounce off you. But we could certainly use the help to make it more than, the Pete and Tony show trying to plant trees,
Well,
And
that
so-
would fit under 1A.
One, providing community involvement in natural resource conservation. I mean,
In
Yeah,
fact,
well-
why don't we have it on here, actually? What are we?
Well, that's what we're here for, is come up with ideas,
Okay.
And the other
and I see that as an actual project, right?
Right.
We
Yeah.
can plan for it. We know it's in April.
Well,
What are we going to do?
Okay.
if we,
over there on the wall, just so we know, there's the city commission goals, and I forgot, but goal 3 is enhance the livability of the
Livability,
community.
Yes.
yeah, which that certainly,
Yes.
Do you know one thing I'm wondering about with these projects? Obviously, there's natural resource issues, and what we don't necessarily have is kind of like a consensus and a priority sense. Like, what are the most important natural resource issues that we should be identifying and addressing? I mean, this nobody's against Arbor Day or something like that, or we're talking about doing the tour. I think part of figuring out the projects is and we probably won't get that tonight, but we need to figure out what is going on, within the city that we should be, doing activities, based on like underserved or emerging issues. It's like, how do we, if we had to justify why we're doing one activity over another, what do we point to?
Well,
Except that, somebody wants to do
And I
it.
guess the larger question is, are you guys strictly policy, or are you policy in on-the-ground projects? Right? Are you only reviewing things that we bring or another department brings, or making recommendations on you should be trying to do this? Or do you delve into, hey, here's something we can accomplish, whether it's an informational booth at Movies in the Park one day, or an Ivy Pull, or participating in Arbor Day, or is that really not what we do here at the NRC?
Well, you've really put your finger on an important question, I think, that we need to resolve, and that is.
And so, like I said, I'm just
we
throwing
had this
I'm throwing
discussion.
ideas
Well,
out.
no, it's a great one to bring up, and we talked this over with Doug Neely and others too. And the vision of, I think, this group from the start was that we were advisory to the city on technical and policy issues. But having said that, I don't think that precludes that we would engage on specific projects. But I think that's kind of the question in front of us. Do we want to include some activities like that in our work plan or no? And I think that's just exactly
I think we
what
should,
both of us-
Mr. Chairman, we've been at this for an hour and 20 minutes now,
Yeah,
so
sorry
I'm
to
just
use-
trying to look at our
use-
agenda,
blow
but
up
I
your
think we
agenda.
should keep opening, it open for projects where they're specific to some benefit that we could accomplish.
Well, I tend to
Because
agree
too
with you,
much of
Jerry.
this is too bureaucratic.
I would be worried if I thought we were getting so involved in individual projects and volunteer coordination that it kept us from doing what I
Right.
think is our primary job. But if we can accomplish our primary job and engage in some number of these kind of things, I guess my opinion is that's a good thing.
And I also want to remind the committee that we did initiate a very, I think, well-thought-out recommendation back in January, and I hope that that's going to be something we bring back up under old business tonight, because I don't know that we got a final resolution to that, but we have been project-driven in the past. You call me the historian, I'll be the historian here, in that we looked closely at the Heritage Ordinance and tried to figure out how it would apply. We tested it in the field. That was a project in relation to Waterboard Park. We found that development could still occur there in spite of the some concerns some folks had if certain efforts were taken. In the case of the Cove, there's about 3 or 4 of us here that worked real hard to initiate considerations that were, I think, not being considered and put them into the concept master plan that was adopted by the city. So I think we have a history of working on projects, and we should continue to do that.
When I read the responsibilities, it says first that we're a project-based committee, and second, a policy committee. And I think some of that overlaps, kind of
Right.
like a Venn diagram, that there's a lot of that, but it's very clear that promoting community involvement in conservation of natural resources is our primary responsibility.
Right.
So that's more project work.
Right.
Tony, I think part of the thing, in thinking of kind of like niches for organizations and activities, we're not like going into an empty room as far as kind of like projects or on the ground stuff. You got Solve, you got, stuff going on through the Stormwater Conservation District, Watershed Council. You have a whole range of players out there already doing stuff, and I think a challenge for this group is figuring out what can we do that's not duplicating what somebody else is already doing, that kind of provides a unique role or service that fits in and also reflects the kind of time allotments that we have available to participate in that and
You
things.
just listed our resources for our projects, too.
Yeah,
Those
well.
are people that we would have. That's a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
list.
So, but it's kind of figuring out what do we do on like on the ground project sense that makes sense given our capacities and makes sense given what else is going on out there.
I guess, expanding on that, let's just say every year we identified a park, or every year we identified a creek, whether it be Caulfield Creek or Abernethy Creek, right? And the goal was to utilize the contacts that to bring them together, and then, maybe we write a grant. Right? I mean,
That's true.
just throwing ideas out there.
That's a real good one.
The backboard's kind of blank here. We have no infrastructure, so we got to create it, right? And we have no real direction, so we can create that too, right? So I mean, we can do whatever we want, and if you guys aren't interested in doing projects, then we won't, If you are, maybe we tackle one, right? I mean, make it manageable and something we can just succeed at. And-
Well, your Arbor Week example, by the way, I know the Lake Oswego profile, that what they were doing was comprehensive, month-long worth of pruning workshops, planting workshops, all sorts of things like that, plant ID and so forth. That's, I think, beyond this committee. To help out on parts of it, I think we could do that. But to
Maybe this year,
execute
but maybe
the
not
news releases, the promotional materials, the workshop coordination, last year I did the tour that we're going to talk about, I hope, at some point. Brian and I worked on that together, and it was successful in spite of a event that it was involved with that was a non-event. The Willamette Falls Festival didn't go very well, and our thing, I thought, went well in combination with a few other dedication things that were happening. That took a lot of work, and it was myself and Brian, mostly myself, that did that. So the question in this body I would pose is, for us, we need to be careful about how much we commit to,
Yes.
and see what the benefit would be. If you already have infrastructure to do Arbor Week in place, and you've been doing it, I don't know why we would replace that. Maybe we can augment it.
Well, I don't think it's replacing it. I think it's augmenting it. It's
Because
being
part of
it. I
Arbor
think
Day
it can
is
be-
having a citizen involvement and a tree
Right.
subcommittee aware and promoting it.
Right.
That's why.
I mean, it's something that's existing. It's something that we've been trying to do now yearly, and it could be so much more. But it's you're looking at it.
Right.
And I
Right.
think as a former volunteer manager, the way to optimize our involvement, I think, is just volunteers want to know, what do you want us to do? When do you want us to do it? How long is it going to take? And why is it important? And if you go ahead and just say, we need somebody to staff a booth Saturday morning at this location, 2-hour shift, that's, I think, something manageable that hopefully maybe some folks can work into their schedule, but we just kind of need to know. I think the devil's in the details as far as, what exactly the request would be. And we're not trying to figure that out right now, but
Right.
that's, I think, the kind of level of information to really make sure somebody's there, doing what you're asking.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would ask us, or I'll make a motion that we go through this document and figure out what
Right.
we can accomplish tonight with the document.
And I think that
I made a motion. I made a motion.
idea I'm commenting on it.
Okay, thank you.
Ginger's idea of focusing on 1 and 5 is a real good thing, because they are the things that we have more control over, and we can vary and prioritize more. They're not
Okay.
based on,
But
when
still,
a plan comes in that needs comments on,
okay,
things like
but
that.
still retain the other ones that were in the
Yeah,
document?
we're not getting rid of them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so,
One thing under,
Anybody got a
excuse me.
second?
I made a motion, but
okay,
What was the motion?
motion was that we get busy and look at this document and accomplish what we can tonight.
I would second that.
okay.
An hour ago.
I'll vote for all of us, yes.
All right, any further discussion? And then in the interest of consensus, let's go ahead and dive into this.
Well, I'm fine with
You wanna
that.
do this,
I
Brian, or
guess
you
in
want
the
me to?
interest of making progress, though, rather than circling around,
Yeah.
I didn't see anything wrong with the idea that we would point toward the Arbor Day activity as one thing that we might engage in and provide some level of support. I mean, giving due deference to Bob's comment, which I thought was exactly right, that before we made a commitment to what we would do, we'd have to know what it was, of course.
Well, right.
I
But
think
other than that, I guess I like the idea.
Okay,
Is it-
I would like to build on this idea, because I have been pressured in a gentle way from the 10 and 11-year-olds that I worked with last year to run a science fair. And they've done some independent work. They're interested in natural resources. One student, who's 11 years old, based on an activity that I showed him at Pine Mountain Observatory, where you actually go from ponderosa pine to ponderosa pine and smell the tree. Had no idea that they smelled differently. Why would they smell differently? Because they're the same tree, and they're in the same microclimate. They're in the same zone, there was no reason for them. And I asked him, so how are you going to answer your question? Well, it became a year-long project for him, and he presented the results to me. And I thought, why can't we do that why can't we open that up for every child? Why couldn't we do an Arbor Day, an Arbor Weekend, an NRC tour, Arbor Day events, and have a science expo, which could be called, science teacher, guilty, okay.
She had this plan.
City of Oregon City, STEAM Expo. STEAM is science, technology, engineering, math, and art. Okay. And then anyone from the age of 5 to community college age can enter and either run a project where they focus on natural resources. They can engage in scientific inquiry. They can do an art project. They can do whatever. And they would bring this to a culminating activity. It might be the Arbor Day celebration, wherever that happens to be, and they would do an exposition. There could be 4 areas: water, plants and animals, people, and places. And then that way kids could engage at whatever level. People, they could study the history. Places, they could study the parks, how to do a park improvement. Plants and animals, invasive species, where do you see a beaver dam in Oregon City? I mean, the whole thing would be focused on Oregon City. And water, well, we've got lots of water issues. So there's lots to be done there. And at the end, we would have the kids create a booklet that would be used, tours of Oregon City or info about Oregon City for kids by kids. And then we would give that to parents we could maybe apply for a tourism grant or whatever, but we can actually publish cheaply from internet publishers some colored books with color pictures to promote Oregon City. And then we could use them as guides. Kids can do scientific guides for plants or invasive species in a certain area, or, I mean, there are all sorts of things that are possible, building on 2 things, very important foundational pieces. One, the NRC tour, because we can do that during that time, and then the Arbor Day activities. I mean, that's the perfect time to have all of that come up. So, who's volunteering to run it?
I was going to say, we know which member.
Right. And I'd be willing to, I would go out and get the people to volunteer to get people involved to make that happen. Parents, students. I mean,
What date again are we looking at?
That's April.
Well, traditional Arbor Day, Arbor Month is April, and then the the tour was fall last year, but
That's correct, and it was done specifically for a reason.
So we can talk about
so anyway, so that's an idea.
All right.
And I thought
Well, let
that's
me
a
ask you a
project.
question. Are you asking to take over the tour part? Because,
No,
okay,
no.
because what
I
I
need the
specifically
expert.
was looking at, and we did last year, was we combined cultural history with natural history and a review of the city. And as Alice Norris put it to me, this is community building. We're looking at all sorts of things, including, we had developers on board talking about their projects. And, I thought that was really good interplay. It's a little bit different than what you're talking about. What you're talking about is probably a different kind of tour, which should be a part of what you're doing, but for the Arbor Day event you're talking about.
Maybe they're both tours can be available, and
Right.
people could pick the one that they want. They could do.
Well, I mean,
if
the
you-
fall thing is going to be different. It's
Yeah,
fall
it is.
foliage.
Yeah, right.
It was fall foliage oriented, and cultural history and some other aspects were tied into it.
We could build off of that model pretty easily.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
yeah, we have the expertise. To
So the
show
question
them how to
on
put that together.
resources, that bus tour from last year cost the city $418 because I'm the one that got the bus, and Pete got it paid for. Is that something that we could double, Mr. Development Director?
Yeah, I'm just
Could I
Timing
back
the-
up?
I mean, just talking about whether it's feasible, that's a good question. I don't want to embark on a road that isn't feasible.
Ginger,
I
I'm
like
at.
this idea of spring and fall. But
Yeah, spring and fall would be.
The only question I guess I have about this, the Arbor Day is going to take place in April. It's obviously going to be next year in that.
2015.
The only question I have, and I think it's something we want to look at, is just what's the 12-month time frame we're looking at for this? I'm not suggesting saying what it's going to be, but are we looking July 1st through June 30th of next year? I'm not clear myself, so
Yeah.
I
Did we ever
think.
even say we were looking at 12 months?
This-
I
I
think it
don't
said
just-
the annual.
We went, the city went to a biennium budget. It's really hard to get complicated projects done in 1 year. So either you put it on and it's going to roll over,
Indeed.
or maybe we think about this in terms of matching up with the biennium budget, since we're going to be making those budgetary requests at that same time. Just another thing to kind of throw
Well,
out
it'd be a
there,
good
right?
model, because I tend to agree with you. 12 months might be the wrong time frame to be project driven.
All I'm
You know,
saying is
yeah, I'm
that if
happy.
we're planning stuff and thinking of schedules and things, I think at the beginning we need to be clear what time period this plan covers. You know, if it's 12 months, if it's 24 months, fine. I'm not saying what it should be, but we should know, like, is this something we want to have, you know, from July 1st? I don't know, but I'm just saying that we need probably to, because otherwise we don't know if something's like in part of this plan or part of a next plan.
My sense is it probably ought to be more than 12 months.
Well,
Which
the
means
city's
starting
budget
right
is
now,
biennium,
you
it's
know.
2 years long, yeah.
Or sooner.
Well, you should also probably look for some other partners on this, like Clackamas Community College, the Greater Oregon City Watershed Committee, and maybe some corporate people might be interested in participating somehow.
Yeah.
I could see where Pacificor might like
Yeah.
something like that.
Also,
Maybe others.
the Metro enhancement grants can be applied to educational things, as long as they have to do with the
Oh, that's a good
environment.
one. Yeah, Metro.
Yeah.
And there's a city tourism grant as well.
Yeah, there is education, yeah, tourism type grants are available too. So it'd be a matter of, you know, there's got to be a funding source. I'm assuming that the educational institutions would finance some of this because it's part of their educational thing. So a certain amount would be covered in that way. And then looking at, you know, something like the Metro grant or tourism grants or a combination of the above to help finance the rest of it, you could come up with a pretty good program, I think.
So
All right,
something,
I'm gonna say-
acting as a facilitator here, just try this for a sec. Does it seem reasonable that this is worth putting on the list and we can come back and talk
Yes.
about it?
Sure.
Arbor
And-
Day,
I'd say
Yeah.
educational,
think it's
science, and then, you know, because I think
Yeah.
we're going to go through this, right? And then
Right.
we're going
Right.
to clean it up, and then we're going to come back and make some decisions about
So,
prioritization. Is that fair enough at this point in the
yeah.
night?
That's
and-
fine.
and
Tony, what
this
is
is a something that needs some looking at.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Like I said, it's an idea.
Yeah, and
But
The
I
other-
guess just for the sake of time, I'm saying it seems like there's enough support to at least put it on the list to further investigate and have a discussion.
And I would
about it.
suggest you put it on 1B, because it really fits that very nicely. Promote the community involvement in natural resources conservation, the things that you were talking about. I'm just,
So I guess I'm assuming, can I maybe just, for 1A, conduct annual NRC tour. I'm assuming that there's consensus to have that on the list.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, one thing that we threw out there is, you know, as we come up with, you know, what are the educational opportunities that we can bring? You know, we have multiple properties that back up to natural resource overlay districts or streams. You know, should we be putting together some type of a flyer, you know, that goes on the website? Maybe we mail it to people and, you know, saying, here's the benefits. You know, is that something that's of any interest, or do we just? you
is
know,
that something you're wanting to do, or you
well,
want to have us do?
I was trying to think of how better ways that we can involve the community about the natural resources that we have. in our
That certainly would be
community,
helpful,
right?
yes.
And so, you know, and that's something that, you know, I was throwing out there because, you know, like right here, like some of that has to do with PW, some of that's going to have to do with parks, you know. So that would be something I would then, if it's something we're interested in doing, I would go communicate with them and see if something they're interested in doing,
Yes,
right?
sure.
But
No, that's-
That's up the Community Neighborhood Association.
the CIC,
Yeah.
yeah.
Bill, William, Bill, I'm trying, is the coordinator of that, I believe.
With
Um,
Yeah.
the chairs, and William Gifford, I think is.
Right.
Yeah,
here for
William
that.
Gifford, yeah.
And Ginger, just to clarify, I do a lot of grants. The Oregon City Civic Improvement Grant cycle is in March with decisions in April. The Metro Enhancement Grant cycles are consideration of grants in April with decisions in May, both of which won't work for 2015. All right. However, if we kept this, you know, focused with the kind of things you're talking about, I'm sure we could find, and Tony talked about perhaps some other outside grants that I don't know about. I do a lot of grant work, so does Brian. But to say that OCCIT would take this up, it won't happen in 2015 in time to help us.
Yeah,
And the funds would not be available until July 1st, by the way, because they've already made their decisions for
Fiscal
2000.
year, you're right.
Yeah.
yeah,
But there may be other partners. So I think, you know,
Yes.
But there's
I-
other
I-
sources besides the city grants, yeah.
So I think for 2A, comprehensive plan revisions, we all agree that, unless there's something at this point you're waiting for staff to come back and say, we're going to be looking at this, unless there was something you wanted to put on that we took up to the city commission.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
tell us
two-
what the schedule is, and if the answer is there's nothing
There is
looming
nothing
in the
right
next
now.
year, well.
Yeah.
But did we decide that we're done with 1, A, B, and C?
Well, let's stop there a second, just to be sure what we just did with one, because I heard proposals for 1B and 1C. Did we all agree that those should be inserted? I mean, 1B was the Arbor Day related
Right.
activities, and 1C, Tony brought up another idea I liked really well and thought our committee is well staffed and qualified to do it. This idea of this urban streams brochure.
Okay.
I mean, if that's something the city wants, I mean, my opinion is it's something that we could take on in the next year, and that could be 1C, all righty.
I guess, the way I'm envisioning this is, I think we get the input, right? We get it down on a paper. We go back, we clean this up. I think we have to come back again
Yes.
and kind of say, okay, because I need to get an idea of how many things are going to end up on this by the time we're done here. And, maybe we need to pare this down or reprioritize.
Well-
I think we need to figure out, are we talking a 2-year? Are we going to match it up to the city's budget or not?
Yeah, we,
Understand,
Okay.
and you also made the very fair comment, kind of back to the specifics of the stream brochure, but other ones as well, that then you're going to have to circle around to other programs, and it affects other advisory committees. I mean, we understand
Okay.
that that's part of the
So I
process.
don't view this as kind of like the last final.
No,
Okay,
No.
all right.
no, not at all.
yeah,
Never
the,
ends.
the Science Day idea really needs study, to flesh out what the proposal really is going to be. And so we're not, it could take a year or two before that really happens.
Yes.
Real easy.
I mean, look how much time we spent on the heritage tree document and then the other components, so,
And
well,
the Urban Streams brochure, it seems to me that we could partner with the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council on that.
Yes, it's a good suggestion.
Yeah. So that would be a good good way to get in contact with them, who share some of our interests,
So does that seem like, are there more proposals for community involvement?
The one thing that I thought of in combination with Arbor Day is trying to develop a small volunteer program, say for planting trees for the elderly, something like that. That's just an idea. Yeah, us. Yeah.
We talked about
Yeah, and we have to recuse ourselves from the vote, right?
So how about
But anyway, it's an idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
so,
I'd like to propose this additional thing on this, and that would be like at the end of a year of this plan, that maybe we revisit and decide
Oh, yeah.
whether or not there's like maybe a different activity, based on trends or way things are going that we want to take that maybe isn't continuing from what we're doing, but it's something different.
Yeah,
Just so-
we'll get some of these done, like say if we really take on the Urban Streams brochure, we'll get it done in a year.
And it falls
It
off.
won't be around next year.
And I don't think that needs to necessarily be. I think if we can all just agree, I really do think we should. My personal recommendation would be follow the city commission model, since we're going to be our budget's going to be tied to them. Is that we do our proposal, we do our 2-year budget, our 2-year work plan, and we do a check-in at 1 year.
Yeah.
But it's not hey, let's redo everything. It's here's where we're at.
Okay.
Do we need to tweak anything? And off we go. I mean, it should really be a very simple exercise of an update. Here's where we're at. Have things changed? And then we move on. It's not a wholesale throw this out and start over. Okay.
all right. So are we on 2 now, Mr. Chairman?
I thought we were going 1 and 5.
I don't know where we're
Yeah,
at.
Well,
2
I
and
guess
3 we can pretty
can
much.
I maybe just walk through 2 real quick, just to give you some of the notes that I wrote when I looked at this. 2B, code revisions. I think we talked about this a little bit as to you're going to wait and hear from us, or if there's a specific proposal, it's going to be more of a topic and a why that gets brought up to the city commission, not a wholesale rewrite and then send it up. We want to make sure we have buy-in from the commission before we start investing a whole lot of energy and time into that. Statewide planning goals. Now, policies, so I guess this is another one of those, I guess, where it's an update. If something comes out where we get put into periodic review, or a new requirement from the Oregon Revised Statute or from Metro comes down that affects natural resources, that's when we would engage. So at this point, I don't see it as a work plan item.
Okay, I would like to comment on that. I
Okay.
think, I'm not speaking for Shaw, who's not
Yes.
here, but I believe, based on the last meeting, Shaw's idea is maybe we initiate certain things.
Yes.
And I kind of disagree with that.
Yeah.
But I'm just expressing what I
Sure.
think she had in mind here.
And so I think it goes back to, if there's something we want to initiate, let's say she wants to initiate dark skies. Okay?
Yes, yeah,
I am
that's
not
good.
going to initiate dark skies unless my commission tells me to and funds me to do it. That's just the way it is. I don't
Okay.
have it in my work plan. So, I think this goes back to, coming from city to you guys is easy. Going the other way is harder. It
Yes.
needs to get budgeted. So maybe it gets rolled into November. But at this time, right now, there's nothing to do with this topic.
However, if we were, Mr. Chairman, I want to remind the group that we did a month ago hear from the mayor asking us to make sure that during the next 2 or 3 months that we met with the city commission, if we felt the dark sky thing, or she felt that it's something doable, then we could certainly advocate that idea to them. Is that then what would help you?
She can advocate it, certainly.
Right,
But
and if the
I am-
commission
I-
agreed, if
I
the
am
commission
not going to
agreed-
initiate a code change based on an NRC request. I guess I'm just trying to.
No,
I don't mean to be
understand
blunt.
that. This
But-
isn't a,
Yeah.
we tell you,
Right.
you
Yeah.
start a city
Yeah.
code change.
I
I think we all understand
Right,
that.
but if the commission agreed that it was something that we should pursue in future developments, and they,
If the city commission,
Felt positive
if the
about
city
it.
commission makes it a goal and budgets me and approves me to do it,
yeah,
we will start to work it into our
Okay.
work plan.
All right.
That's I think it's that how do your recommendations
Yes.
filter up
Yes.
Yes.
to get
Yeah,
implemented?
Yeah.
That has
I
to
mean,
happen.
It's codified, the 4 ways that the comp plan or the code gets initiated is codified in the zoning code.
Yes.
So there's resolution request by city commission, official proposal by planning commission, an application to the planning division on forms and accompanied by information prescribed by the planning commission, or a legislative request by the planning division.
Just to
So, yeah.
beat this to death,
Yeah.
which I don't know whether it needs it or not, but I mean, the third one of those is what we've been talking about, isn't it? I mean, it is possible that this group, brings to you a proposal.
goes here.
And then you decide, of course, what you do with it next.
Right,
But,
yeah.
but, I guess we're saying we see it within our scope that we might do that.
Right.
And then you decide
I don't disagree at all.
what you do with it
I think
next.
it's just setting, that I would hope that there's agreement that if it is something that this body has a desire to change or address, that we take the topic up and get buy-in.
Right.
Yes.
Before I'm able to expend legitimate resources to actually.
We all understand that. Just because we said so doesn't mean the train takes off.
Right.
all right. So we're on 2, is that where we're at?
Land use application review.
Yeah.
There seem to be.
As appropriate,
Well, what's that? I mean,
well,
Well,
Are
Let me
we-
throw an idea of a threshold. I think you kind of alluded to it a little bit when you were talking about like a road paving project or something like that that doesn't really have significant either policy or natural
Well-
resource implications. I think if we could clarify what a threshold would be, that could help. I think on your guys.
I don't know if maybe
end.
this is because I'm hearing a couple things. I heard we're more interested in what the code actually allows to happen rather than reviewing the 20 NROD applications that come in. Versus, I think there are some folks who want to look at the actual applications themselves. So I'm hearing kind of 2 different things here, and I'm not sure what to do with it, to be honest. And I don't know if maybe we
I don't think
punt
they're-
this and have a discussion about it later.
Yeah.
We got more time, or
well, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. So the only reason to look at something is if there's some natural resource value being impacted that we might benefit by reviewing. That would be really the only thing. And if it's just paving a street, of course, there's nothing there. that
Well,
we
paving a
need-
street isn't a land use application. I'm talking about
Right.
private development that goes through
Okay.
the land use process.
New
Um,
roads.
Yeah, if there's,
And
that
any
needs-
city
that
develop,
needs to comply with the Natural Resource Overlay District adopted code.
Yeah.
including city developments initiated by the city that are done by the city. Is that not true?
If it
Don't you
goes-
run those through a review process too?
yeah,
Okay.
it would be beneficial to us to more fully understand what's already required
Okay.
by the city code
Okay.
to happen, say if a stream is involved or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the situation is. That would be an educational thing for us. It would be real beneficial. Then,
So maybe rather than land use 101, it's kind of maybe diving into the Natural Resource Overlay District code.
Here we go.
Yes, I
yeah,
think that's probably.
yeah, because
Yeah.
that is our subject matter. So,
I feel like I had 101 with the South End project really.
Yeah.
But I think there's two
102,
things here, and I
that's
mean,
right.
I agree with you, Brian, that they aren't mutually exclusive. I mean, the big one, I think, is here's how the code's implemented, and here's the...
Here are the rules.
Yeah, but also here's the consequences of those rules, and here's a couple of them that are kind of ugly,
Right.
and we need to both understand that, and then that might cause us to make a recommendation sometime later. But then there is the specific stuff. Here's a big project, has all kinds of natural resource impact. Yeah, they're happening within the city code, but there's a bunch of decisions in this about how you do this and this and this. And we may well look at that and say, well, you know, I mean, look at the tree planting plan over here or something. Why are you using these species? You know, it's gonna have these problems for you. Have you thought about this? Or, I mean, it's possible that we would make those kinds of project-specific comments as well. Or what's your plan to protect these plantings from beaver predation? Or, you know, whatever it might happen, whatever comment it might happen to be, but a project-specific comment that then, of course, you use any way you choose.
Well, yeah, but I guess I just want to make sure that I want to avoid the conflict of. I just want to make sure that the comments are tied to the language in the legislation that I can actually implement on.
Understand that it's not useful to you to have us comment.
have you
we
say
don't
this.
like you doing this
Yeah,
stuff according
and
to your
then you're
codes.
in conflict
Yeah.
with David Evans and us. You know,
Yeah.
I just want to avoid that wherever
Yes,
I can.
I understand what your
Okay.
concern is.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
and again, getting properly educated on the regulations would really be beneficial.
Okay. All right.
Because that will help avoid some of those, because, you know, we might just assume something needs to be said when it's already in the code, and,
Right.
you know, unless we really know
Okay.
what's in the code.
So
Okay.
where are we now on our process?
3A and B are duplicative. No, they're not.
Right.
There's your own blue heron.
Where are we at now on our process? Are we
3B,
get-
Blue Heron site review. I kind of think we talked a little bit about this with this and the Cove project. At this point, it's updates and waiting for land use, and so I'm not sure that I see an action here.
Yeah, we're just going to have to wait until those are ready to be commented on.
Right.
These are more just kind of placeholders right now, just
Yeah.
to acknowledge it could be a future role.
That's why you did it that way, I remember.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
wonder, just speaking out loud, you know, we're talking about time frame. Maybe there's also a little kind of holding sheet that gets tacked on the back. Other things that we know are out there, but there isn't a specific time frame
Well,
yet, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Something I might do is take these and have everyone vote on it, 1 to 10, how important it is. These things that we can't do anything on, or what, things that we're gonna do this year are 10, you know, and average all the votes together, and you have, you know, you have your priorities.
So you're suggesting that we take these home and do that work and bring it back or something? Is what you're
That would be a
suggesting?
possibility,
Okay.
or we might have some notes from this meeting that might help.
Right.
Something to think about too is if you're doing a 24-month schedule, if you put A or B, A would be like the next 12 months and B would be the
Well,
second
no,
12 months.
that's at my discretion, based on workload. Honestly, I mean.
No, I'm talking about for us, our committee activity. You know, like what we want, yeah.
But
I'm-
okay, yeah. I guess what some of them are time dependent. Some of them are going to be resource dependent. You know, like the commission adopts a 2-year budget with goals, right? That I've got my goals that I've got to complete, but it's up to me to complete them. And so you know, I guess I know where you're coming from. I just don't want to get it seems like we're getting a little bit into the weeds, a little bit here, trying to.
We're not trying to get ahead of you.
Right, I think
we're just trying to
we can
understand
just
what your schedule
agree
is.
to what the projects are, and then we'll dive into the details on that. I think.
Well, maybe we got to stop circling around on this one. I mean, Tony's brought up the point several times that the way the city plans their activities is on a biennial basis. Is there some reason why we don't want to try to mesh
Well,
with that?
we should mesh with that.
I mean, it seems to
That's,
me
you
like
know,
we
the
should.
budget and
It's
everything.
a message I'm
reflects-
hearing.
Right. And there's too much work here. I mean, if we think this brochure, urban watershed brochure can happen in a year based on what we did with the tree
yeah, it's a lot of
ordinance,
work.
I mean,
I
it will
imagine.
take a while. And I think we need to be cautious about how many things we undertake.
Well, that's why I think I'd like to get through this list.
Yeah, and then
Let us
prioritize.
clean it up a little bit,
Right.
and then we're going to have to come back and prioritize. I mean, because I really do kind of see, you know, we've got our code that authorizes this. We've got our bylaws,
3D1.
right? I'd love to have something clean like this, but then, you know, if we have a detailed working sheet behind it, you know, that's more for updates or, you know, but they don't need. It'd be nice to have something clean.
Well, if
We all
we
agree on.
once got this done, I mean,
Then
I
we
think
could
you
transfer that
you
into
could
this.
create one of those off of it.
Does that seem
Yeah.
like a reasonable objective? Okay.
All right. So where are we at now? Are we still on
Well,
3?
3D1?
Okay.
3D1, review city activities and impacts.
That's
So
appropriate.
the discussion on this was, are we reviewing, for example, construction of major infrastructure projects within the natural resource overlay district as they may be reviewed from time to time? Are you, or are
Those,
you,
you outlined that really well for us, and I thought that was what we agreed was
okay.
reasonable.
So activities gets changed to projects in the,
Yeah.
on the original goal statement, and then it gets reflected here. Review,
I will have to say that I believe within this committee, and I don't think I'm overstating it, there's a strong interest in protecting legacy values, and I'm going to let you interpret that one as to, you know, character and assemblages of trees. If we can do that, we'd like to see that happen, but that's your charge, I guess.
and I guess, you know, I think that the action is that we will come and provide you an update. I'm a little, you know, you're an advisory committee. So when I see, you know, review, I mean, and I'm not trying to split words here, but, you know, it would be like when John came for Dunes Drive. I mean, that's what I envision is he comes in, presents the project, you guys provide comments.
That was very helpful.
Right. So, I mean, that's what I'm envisioning this
Right.
means. But I'm not sure that's what the words say. Or am I misinterpreting this?
Well, in some cases, I guess it doesn't even necessarily mean to me that you or someone on your staff comes in and makes a formal presentation to us. I mean, it kind of depends on the activity. Maybe with some things, the better use of time, you just share a document with us, or you know, whatever's the best use of time.
There may not be a staff available to always conduct a presentation.
I guess I want to put this out there is that I think I understand what you want. But if there is something that you see going on or hear about in the paper, that you at least let us know that we would like to hear about this, and not say, why didn't you bring this? Because, you know, knowing what one person on a multiple person commission thinks is important is very difficult for us. And without a clear, like, we're only going to take you type 3 land use applications. That's very easy for me because I know what type 3 land use applications are. Reviewing city projects, it makes me nervous because I think every one of us probably has a different interpretation of what that means. So I'm going to do my best to bring you what I think are significant city projects that impact natural resources. But I would hope that if there's something you hear about, a question you have, that you please just email us and we can try and dig into it rather than have it go by and, you know, it happened and it was a month later till our next meeting and why didn't you bring this to us type of a thing.
Well, I think it's a fair thing to say, because I've got to say, my own personal perspective is I read through some of this stuff and I think, well, depending on how somebody interpreted this, the city could bury us in notices and proposals that we wouldn't be able to read in the rest of my lifetime.
We could
So,
do
I mean, that's not what we're going for either.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's, at any one time, I just opened up the Public Works folder today, and they had close to 80 open capital improvement projects, either out for bid or being worked on, some of which were already approved through a land use
Yes.
process, or were in existing right-of-way or replacement of existing infrastructure. But they're all open, you know,
Oh.
so,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, you've been very fair with us. You've given us what we can handle.
But yeah,
But-
so the whole challenge is
Dunes
how
Drive-
do we all home in on the same vision
Yeah.
of what it is we're sharing?
And the same
Right.
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, and Dunes Drive's a great example, and then the replanting around there. The land use application from Union Pacific coincided nicely with our meeting, and, you know, that sort of thing.
I guess I would just like to, there's no conspiracy here. There's no hiding something. If you want to know about it, just ask, and we will dig it up. But
That's
we,
good.
we think we bring what we think is relevant, and sometimes we get it wrong. So
We appreciate that. So are we down to
3B2. I'm not sure what this one means. Public property and parks upkeep. So is this something where you want to engage PRAC on, for example, pest management plan, or you want to tell them they're not cutting the grass? And I'm not sure what this one means.
I think we were talking about best management practices that we would recommend, and they would have to consider or not consider.
So
This is a policy
So is it
thing.
maybe this an item that when you have your meeting with PRAC, if it's something they're interested in, we maybe pursue, because this one's going to go across multiple departments.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I would
To
have to
figure
say,
out what this relationship is between us and BRAC, and how we share information and activities with each other.
this is a very important issue, though, because I believe that a very large percentage of city property is in parks ownership.
Or Urban
stewardship.
Renewal Commission as well.
Pardon?
Or Urban Renewal Commission.
Or urban,
Yes.
Or
so,
Public Works.
Yeah.
well,
I own no property.
Well, yeah, exactly. We understand your point that this isn't your suitcase. Somehow we got to figure out how the committee can.
So you were saying
Engage
the
in
parks owns a lot of
structure,
property. So
the
what is your
being,
objective here?
the point being, best management practices we might suggest that would be helpful to the cause of protecting and enhancing natural resources. Hopefully, is something that we should advance. If they
Isn't
don't want to
that
accept them,
something-
that's fine.
Isn't that
But
something we can just create as a document and give to them for their consideration?
Perhaps.
Perhaps, but I mean, isn't it something that how we would do it is a dialogue with PRAC,
Well,
and then
yeah,
if
I
we
think
agree
that's
that
a
what
better way
they
to do
need
And
to
then we write it
document
down.
from us, we
Right.
would do
Yeah,
it.
Well,
It's
and I mean, at that point, let's just say PRAC says, yeah, that's a good idea, let's go do it. It's not going to be me
No,
in
it
here
still goes
having
to
that,
the-
right? I'm going to have
Right.
Scott Archer in here, or one of his maintenance guys. I'm going to have Martin in here, because they're the ones who do all the public works. I mean, the discussion is going to have to happen in a much larger
right.
audience.
Isn't there an overall program between the two or among various departments?
I have
Or-
no idea how to get nobody to do it.
I don't
That's
think
a
so.
question
Yeah.
that we would like to know.
Is there a pest management program, and what is it?
Yeah.
And then before we go charging and changing or creating something, maybe we
That's
should
right.
see what's on hand.
Well, what's the
But
baseline?
not,
first,
not,
yeah.
when you say pests, I think, Jerry, you're talking about.
I said best management practices. I didn't
Right.
talk about pests.
No,
Okay.
okay, but I think, I get the feeling from past discussions, maybe you're thinking about how the area is actually managed.
Yeah,
I
landscape.
would say that's,
Landscape management,
certainly,
not
that's,
pests necessarily.
right. And I'll be honest with you, I think if this group was to have our joint meeting with PRAC folks, I know those PRAC people, I've been to their meetings before in the past,
Right.
they would embrace, I'm sure, commentary from us, and I think we would learn from them. I think
Right.
that'd be the best way to handle this issue.
But isn't there some kind of a manual that they use or something, or is it just kind of?
I don't think they do yet.
But isn't that a dialogue to have with them? I mean, there's,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
So maybe we can
Pointing
focus.
that at Tony.
I think we're getting into questions that I don't have the answers
Okay.
to, and I think
Exactly.
I think that there are details that this is a item we're putting on to try and identify and understand.
And the way we implement it ought to be to work with PrAC, it seems to me.
Well,
Or at least start there.
I think we need to be somewhat careful about this because.
Yeah, I mean, this one may go nowhere, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I understand that the result might be, no, we don't need your help, thanks.
Or
very
Or we
much.
just not right now.
Yeah, or we like what we got,
Well,
or
we're supposed to
whatever
be
the
focused
hell,
on
yeah.
natural resources.
Right.
Yeah.
But you
So
know,
that's the lens that we would take to
Yeah.
you know, what
Sure.
is it about the best management that relates
Right.
to natural resources rather than parks management?
Yes.
I mean, that part I totally get.
And the onus is kind of on us. I mean,
Right.
we need to
Well-
be the ones that sell why we've got something
Right,
to offer
right,
here. I mean, you know.
right.
Well, but on the other hand,
Mhm.
for example, if Jerry and Brian have specific issues on how certain areas are managed, then those need to be brought up. I
Absolutely.
guess.
And you too,
And that's
Richard,
what you're
if
talking
you feel.
But not from the Natural Resources Committee, because that's not, I mean, if there are specific things about parks management, you should go ahead and take them. I mean, you don't need us to do that.
I think things get complicated when you think about the Cottonwoods now at Clackamas Park, because obviously you got a city park and you've got PrAC, but it didn't seem necessarily like
Well-
PrAC was taking the lead on some of the management issues in regards to the Cottonwoods.
5 months
Removal of
ago,
them?
5 months ago, we made a recommendation.
Hold on,
this
hold
group-
on, please. Let me
Yes.
understand the question.
No.
On-
Tony's about to point out something important here.
You're talking about the removal of cottonwoods from Clackamas Park?
Well, and the role of parks versus the
Guys,
Urban
can I
Renewal
finish,
Commission.
please? No, but I guess what I'm trying to say is you have one specific geographic area that is, a city park. You've got a committee targeting, parks management has kind of like the mission focus. But the question is, does Natural Resources Committee have a role in regards to those natural resources, even though it's on a city park that's covered by another committee? So that's the question I'm asking.
PrAC does not have the control of the day-to-day operations
Right.
of maintaining the safety
They do
of the
not.
parks.
No, and I'm not saying they do, but what I'm trying to say is, I think there were some larger issues brought up in regards to, how the cottonwoods are evaluated or managed. It's, I guess at some point.
See, this is kind of what I talked about a little bit earlier of the policy discussion versus the day-to-day management and running and, taking on the liabilities and making those decisions on public safety issues are not the purview of PrAC or NRC. We've got to be careful.
We've got to get back to things like best management practices or whatever the mechanism is and discuss that with our counterparts.
Right, I think some of the stuff, though, is you have the day-to-day management issues, but the cumulative effect of day-to-day management issues can have a significant impact on natural resource, the cumulative effect of it. So it's not each day and each on-the-ground management issue is a separate thing. You have a continuum and you have a cumulative impact. And at what stage does a cumulative impact rise to a different level of policy?
Well, I mean, in that overlay district, as emergencies occur, once the emergency is passed, the code requires that mitigation take place and replace whatever was taken out. And sometimes that's with another native tree that's planted in a different location and less risky area. But, that's the idea that you're maintaining what you have. You're not just removing something. You have to.
And do you believe that that has occurred? My
Yes,
understanding
I
is you
do.
told us
I
that
do.
has occurred.
Parks
So-
has
I do believe
planted way more trees.
Yeah, they
All right.
always
I mean,
plant more
the
trees than
amount
they
of trees that have
remove.
been planted are
Yeah.
Right. I think I'm going to come back to this, so you may be tired of hearing about it. We spent 5 months ago, we worked on a recommendation relating to best practices that we thought could be pursued related to beaver issues. And I think what we didn't do was go to Parks and Rec Committee directly with that. We should have done that after nothing happened. We should have probably done that. So whatever the issue is, Cottonwoods or whatever, we have to have a process and pursue it, or know that it'll be pursued, or not embark on it. Seems
Well,
to
that's
me.
where that coordination between PrAC and NRC is
Well,
going.
Yes,
between,
I
I mean,
think
that
so.
one, in hindsight, probably should have gone to PrAC, right? Probably should have gone to URA. Probably should have gone, Scott Archer needed to buy in on it. And depending on the scale of it, you were probably getting into PW.
And they were aware of it. I know they were aware
No,
of it.
but wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Is that there should
Go
have been
ahead.
agreement that this is something that we, A, want to pursue at this time, and B, have the ability to pursue at this time before all the work was done. There should have been buy-in on the topic before it was written and then just presented, right? I think that's the best way that this is going to work, because otherwise we're going to, one of those four drop out in agreement, the work's not, it's hard to implement then. So.
Though, I mean, I hear I'm being a snot, but I mean that kind of gets back to, it wasn't our idea to present those recommendations to the Urban Renewal Commission, of course. I mean, our idea was to have a dialogue about that,
Correct.
and very early in that dialogue, I would have presumed you'd have said something just like you just said right now, and then we would have tried to pursue that. I mean, I think, I don't want to beat that one to death either, but I think that one's the poster child for not having the dialogue that needs
Right.
to happen myself.
Right.
Well, learning curve as it is.
Exactly. Learn from it and move on.
The truth of the
That's
matter is,
fine.
advocated behind the scenes to try to make it happen, and there wasn't interest, and that's where I got pushed to.
All right, so where are we now?
We're on heritage trees.
Yeah, and that just,
That's
when they come up.
there.
Which
I
item
wasn't
is
sure
this?
what street
Three?
trees meant.
Three.
I'm not sure either, to tell
Okay.
you the truth.
I thought we were
Oh,
commenting
just quickly on
species
heritage
selection.
trees, the code has been revised by the committee, and the recommendation is to go forward to the planning commission. So,
Yeah, so
we'll
we
take
we
that
have a
at
new
some
list
point.
that's been developed.
Right.
Eric Carr and I and
Yep.
Pete worked on.
So street tree. I wasn't sure what that was.
Oh, so is this related back to the list itself, or was it?
So is
Because
there any other action that we take on this from now on?
I don't think so.
I
We
don't-
issued
that's why I
these to
think we're
individual
squared away.
abutting property owners on a case-by-case basis.
So I wasn't sure who put. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so maybe
I
is this a
didn't
cross
follow-
off one? Maybe.
It's up to you guys.
Well, it sounds like it to me. And
Yeah, I think that's.
no action required.
I
in
think
the
we're
next 1
done.
or 2
Yeah.
years.
Follow the
So-
agenda and stick with it.
Yeah, I want to talk about this for a minute because I really feel there's a lot of cross-talking occurring in these meetings that don't allow us to move forward. That's one issue, and I don't think we're attempting to stay with the agenda in terms of times. And then I'm noticing that consistently things are dropping off that are old business that were never resolved that should be carried forward. And that's not a good practice. It seems to me that we should have old business unresolved, carry forward to the next agenda, and that's Brian and my job, according to the job descriptions of the chairman and vice chairman. So, it's 9:15. I'm just telling you, I don't want to be here past 9 o'clock, personally. All right, and it's a good dialogue we're having tonight, but this goes on all the time, and I think something needs to change here. And I don't know how the rest of you feel, but that's how I feel. I feel like we're spending a lot of time cross-talking. I'd rather see people pose their question to the chairman and he pose it to the staff involved than having this constant crosstalk occurring from all areas. That's just my opinion.
Well,
I
I
don't know
guess
what
I'd comment about that. I mean, I can't help but agree with you that the most efficient ways to use our time are a good thing, and staying within a 7 to 9 o'clock format for meetings is a good
Yeah.
thing. But I have to say, this has been a great discussion
It's
tonight.
been good.
It's been the best discussion that I've heard since I've
been
been on
good.
this committee. So I would not want to say anything that would discourage what's been happening
No.
over the last
No.
I
Two-
guess
2
I do
hours.
apologize. I kind of came in here, and I guess I view this as kind of a work session.
Well, and it is
Less
a
than
work
a
session,
forum,
and
less
you've
than a
been
forum.
real
So I understand where you're
constructive.
coming from, Jerry. And,
Right.
I mean, if we want to call it, we can call it, and we'll work on it. I mean, we'll.
I mean, the thing is, no, I don't imagine we're going to be able to put paid to this work plan tonight, but I thought we've made huge progress.
Okay, but the one thing I'm going to come back to here, and we talked about this, the three of us, was that if the beaver issue is not resolved, then we want to either revisit it or we want to drop it. And we didn't have it under old business tonight, and it should have been the first thing under old business, okay, because it's not
Well,
resolved.
I'd take your point.
That's
As
a
the way the
process
committee
issue.
ought to work,
Yeah.
I tend to
Right,
agree with
right.
you.
And I see the reality of the beaver issue is we can't resolve it, but we can resolve our discipline
Well, I'm not sure we can't resolve it. I mean, to say
My
two more
understanding
words
was this-
about it. I mean, I heard the idea of discussing it with PrAC. Maybe there are others, advisory groups like the URA, that we should be discussing it with too. But maybe that, I mean, unless we just
I'd
want
like
to
to do
drop
that.
it, maybe
Like to
that
do
is the
it.
next
I'd like to
step.
do that.
I mean,
A couple of things. If I'm hearing you correctly, and you made a great observation, we are treating our meeting like a work session because we don't have a work session prior to a meeting. So the solution might be to review the agenda items in a work session prior to having the meeting, and then having the meeting to hold official business. That's what most boards do.
Yes.
That I've seen. So that's a suggestion, that we meet from 6 to 7 and have a work session, or from 5 to 7 have a work session, then from 7 to 8 or 7:30 you have the meeting and you work through the business and then direct the chair to get more input from staff or whatever we have to do. So that's an idea. And then
Yes,
the second
okay.
part is, Pete did send out the agenda a couple days ago and asked us to make any revisions or any changes that needed to be done. So I made some time suggestions and different things, and if there was something missing, that would be a great time to make sure that it gets on the agenda for that. So those are my thoughts. Great observations, though, Jerry.
Yep.
So
Well,
maybe
is the chairman participating in the agenda preparation? Or
Yes.
I'm not, you and Jerry are getting together and talking about it, or what?
Yeah, not formally at all,
formal,
but
Well, we,
we throw ideas back and forth.
right.
So if I may, just, for anything to get on the city commission agenda, someone needs to bring it forward and there needs to be consensus that it will be on an agenda. Nobody gets to put something on the agenda just by emailing the city recorder or the city manager and saying, put it on. So I would recommend that, is that, however you want it, if it needs to wait another month, it needs to wait another month. But if there's, at the end, tonight, new business NRC members, future agenda items is right here on your
Right.
thing. If
Yes.
someone wants to bring it forward, there needs to be consensus to do it.
And our process has been to build the agenda tonight for the next meeting. That's what we try to always do. And, but again, coming back to my issue of if old business is unresolved, it needs to move forward to the next agenda to be resolved or to be tabled or not acted on,
Okay.
but not lost. And so, anyway,
Okay.
so how much more of this
So
can we do tonight?
5A, coordinate with PrAC Planning Commission and City Commission on at least an annual basis.
Need to do it.
I don't, once again, I think this is one of those administrative things. We schedule the meeting, you guys meet. Coordinate with PrAC Planning Commission on, whoops, what is that? Reconcile bylaws, conduct joint meeting with PC, provide update to City Commission. Yes.
Are we good with most of these?
I'm sorry?
Are we good with most of these? It seems like these,
Well, are a couple of them stated right? I mean, if I'm reading this right, we're trying to engage with PrAC on an annual basis. We're trying to engage with the Planning Commission on an annual basis.
Yes.
Are we really conducting a joint meeting with the City Commission, or are we just annually reporting to the City Commission on our activities?
You've been
That's
at-
what I thought we were doing.
The
we were asked to do
NRC
that.
has been asked to provide an annual update to the
Yes, we
city.
were
Yeah.
asked to do that.
Right, so that's the action.
That's the action.
Yeah.
And then this last one, I don't know if it's titled right or not here, but this drafting natural resource priorities, as I've read it, is the same thing as the developing this set of priorities for the next biennial budget that we would forward in the
Yes.
fall.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know that that's necessarily needs to be on a. I mean, it's just something you do, right? I mean, I'm not sure you have to put on your work
It's like-
plan to develop your work plan for the next biennium. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't.
No, not the work plan, but the
Or the
but
priorities.
the proposal for budget priorities. I think is a task that we would do.
Oh, is that what-
Oh, is
Budget
that what that
priorities.
is?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Oh,
isn't-
okay.
Isn't that what that is?
Should
don't
be.
know.
Should
I
be.
I mean, that's what I'm asking.
Should be.
I think it
Should
is.
be
I think
tied-
it's just
should
not
be.
quite clearly enough identified.
So how about if we add draft city natural resources priorities for, what are we in now? 13, 14? For 15, 16 budget.
Yes.
15, 16, or biennium? The next biennium.
The next biennium budget. That's
That
fine,
is the
yeah.
next
Which will
biennium.
be 15, 16, or
15, 17.
15,
right?
17. Yeah,
Yeah,
jeez.
I know,
getting late.
that's that time.
Third night in a row.
Yeah, yeah, that's all right, you're up there.
All right, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
15, 17 biennium budget.
Yeah.
And this business of reconciling, in 5A, reconciling bylaws, is that really something we can do?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I put
I don't know.
I put Y next to it.
Yeah.
I think it's identifying projects where you have joint interest, and then exploring where there may be those, right? Because like when you look at their goals, you already know. I would imagine Blue Herons. I think you're probably going to want to be involved in Newell Creek Canyon. I think that you're going to want to become informed of the goals and initiatives of the Oregon City Commissions, its boards and commission. I mean, there's a lot of overlap already,
Yes.
right? So I think it's trying to identify your projects that you have that you want to see if they're interested of them, and then if there are things they need from you. I mean, I wouldn't get so hung up on the bylaws, not saying that we need to meet every year. I really wouldn't. Unless they say, no, we don't want to meet, and then we go and make an issue of it and have them change their
Well,
bylaws. But
they've already said they want to meet.
that's what I mean, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't waste energy on that. Yeah.
What I do see is that with respect to the goals for PrAC for 2014, there are specific numbered goals here that you would want to comment on and coordinate with them on, like championing open space discussions regarding Newell Creek Canyon, working with them on the city on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, which we discussed, and if there are any natural resource overlay districts within the Glen Oak or Filbert Run property parks, then you probably want to chime in on that. Yeah, and I believe there is a portion of both of those parks within the NROC.
So how about if,
Yeah.
so does that seem like, have we discussed everything?
Yes.
One through
Pretty
five?
much.
Well, wait, I guess the thing I had is we're going to do some follow-up, I think, for the next meeting, like prioritize these 1 to 10, or...
Yeah,
Well,
we should probably get some notes together
Yeah.
off
Yes,
the tape, and so that we're all commenting on the same thing.
yes.
yeah.
Because
so
everybody's got their own notes. And
I will attempt to consolidate what Tony and I have heard into one document.
Okay.
And
yeah, we
send
got the
that.
tape. And,
Yeah.
And you
Suggest
got
that we have a
the
work session to go
copy,
over it together.
did you modify?
we could.
Yeah.
We could.
Yeah.
So, I guess, we're gonna take a whack at this.
Okay.
Right. We might play with the format a little bit. And you can either boot it or not. Just trying to figure out the best way to utilize this. Clean it up a little bit. It doesn't, I think, there's many subsets to this. It's here's your goal or your work plan. Here's some of the specific. I mean, there's going to be implementation documentation behind it. So it all doesn't have to be on one page. Just trying to clean this up a little bit. Raise the, let's not get mired in the details. When we decide, okay, we're working on this, we're going to dive into the details. But let us kind of manage that behind, and you guys more focus on the policies and the goals and the work plan.
I think, though, to operationalize it, though, you do need to, identify if somebody's going to take a lead, like
Certainly.
Ginger talking about
Yep.
the science fair, something like that. Because if we don't get to that level of detail, it just kind of drifts on. It may not happen.
Yeah.
And I think just a comment out of the air here. I think it is possible to take some of these columns and meld them together, just for purposes of making the whole thing compact and most easily readable.
Yeah,
I mean,
we do need something where we can specify that we're studying this at this point, we're making a final project at this point. That would be what the deliverables column could be used for, because because you can put something down and, are we going to finish this in the next 6 months, because we're just studying the thing. And So,
I think we do want to keep the responsibility, because the responsibility category is what ties us back to the bylaws. I mean, of course, what we're trying to do is link a work plan to our bylaws. So if you eliminate the first column, you
Yeah.
break the linkage.
I
No, I
don't-
agree with that. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's
I don't-
something that the committee is all accepted, that we
Right.
tie this to our
right,
bylaws.
right, that's
Yeah.
very important.
What if we put the action or the project in the first column, and then the second column, responsibilities and city goals?
You could. I think the only reason it was done the other way around was just so they were in order of grouping each you know,
Yeah, and I think
the
we
things that
we
fit
can
to
just
each bylaw
we can
together.
just
I
put
get-
the number as well. We don't need to. I mean,
Yes, you
have
could
all
have done
that-
it the other way around.
Yeah.
City Commission, goal number 1.
Yeah.
And it lists the 5 projects underneath it.
Right.
I mean,
Just
there's
like
a lot of ways we could format this.
Yes,
so
no, that's also true.
nice and clean.
nice and clean. Like I said, the working document doesn't need to be
Yeah, well,
But to do the
face
level of
document.
work, I want to work with this document.
Yeah, but I think
Details.
we remember this is a work
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
You know, like a plan of how we're going to achieve this.
Yeah, we do have our 5 goals in the new bylaws that we're about to adopt here.
So let's stop on that just a second, because we
What
always talk
happens
about
now?
like this, like we just adopted it, of course. But I mean, what we're just about to do is finalize our proposal. Talk to us a little bit about the next steps. I mean, we finalize our proposal for new bylaws. We give them to you. What happens between us handing them to you and them going to the city commission for possible action?
Proposed changes or amendments will be forwarded to the city commission for approval.
So I would
in the
recommend
bylaws.
one
In our
or two
bylaws.
of you, we get it on the city commission agenda and you come up and make the presentation.
So.
We haven't focused yet on what those other steps
And,
are,
you
and we
know-
really need to do that.
You know, I guess I'm just a little bit, is there agreement that this is kind of the working document?
Yeah,
It's
And
kind
I'm
of the
gonna-
plan.
And I'm going to take this though, and we're going to agree, we're going to come back and we're going to prioritize these, and maybe some of these are going to fall off because there's too many or whatever it ends up. And then somehow we are collectively going to summarize those into something like this.
That's cool.
That
Yes.
then we can take this to the city commission, and I don't want to take them this.
no.
No, I understand
That's-
that. This thing was never
This
intended
is
to
our
be for
working
anybody
document.
else.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is for.
This is
It's just
how
a
we do
working
it.
document.
Okay, but our objective is this. Okay.
So in number 6 of our, organizational procedures, Article 6, number 6, before the end of each calendar year, the committee will review and assess outcomes and activities during the year. At that time, committee will prioritize their goals and responsibilities for the following year. These goals and responsibilities will submitted to the Oregon City Commissioners and Oregon City Parks and Recreation Committee for their consideration and use during annual planning retreats, is what that says. So that was.
So obviously that's a little bit dated since we went to the biennium, but you know we will track that administratively. Like, hey, you know, biennium's coming up. You know, let's get ready. So
Okay,
so we had a point to
yeah, I think
get off our topic on this.
I think so. Anybody?
Well, I guess just for me to understand here, so we'll see a revision to this, and then, Brian, there will be a process here where you're going to forward this to us and ask us for individual input on the priority
Right.
item. And
Right.
then you'll consolidate.
What's the most effective way for you guys to provide that back
Well-
to me once I?
Well, I guess what I'm
The revision
wondering.
was over here.
I'm wondering, you know, like when we've done, like we do this with the city commission, right? Everybody's got their wish list, right? And we get into the retreat, and you know, it either rises or it doesn't, right? And so, you know, I'm wondering if we put this together. You know, I don't. It's tough to just rank things. I mean, we could certainly take, if everybody wanted, you know, we'd send it out, everybody ranks theirs, you know, however we're going to score it, sends it back to us, we tabulate it, maybe there's a clear 1, 2, 3. What I found, though, is that with this many people, with this many objectives, you know, there's probably not going to be a clear path. There may be for the first couple, but then it gets going to get real murky, and it's hard to do it in a vacuum. And we may have to come together.
Maybe that's the work plan that.
Well,
You
Ginger.
know, I'm not sure how much of this is worth just doing individually coming here prepared, or if you want to go through the exercise, send it to us, we tabulate it. And
Well,
I would rather come here prepared because you're correct. It needs an inner dialogue to make sure
Yeah,
that we
so-
understand what we're
I
doing.
think we need to go through this
We
exercise.
will
one more time.
reformat it, but,
Yeah.
and then.
There's
rework
also-
the priorities.
yeah, also the option of us having a work session,
Yeah.
Yeah.
at a
just to
work
do
session.
that.
Between
Certainly.
now and the July
Yeah.
meeting. yeah.
Right.
Tony, what's a brief document that you're going to be? No, I mean, what do you call what you have? Not what we're working on, but the thing you're looking to consolidate. I mean, what is?
What are we going to call this?
Yeah.
I don't know. They've called it their 2014 goals. I mean, that's why I think they're using it interchangeable. Like this is what they're trying to achieve. Whereas, we've kind of got those 5 broader goals in our
Yes.
bylaws, but these are their goals to accomplish during 14.
Goals for the year, the
Yes.
biennium.
Yeah.
You know, you might notice the date on this though,
Uh-huh.
4014.
Well, they're taking
It's
some
going to take them that long to do them, right?
Where did they get that?
That's my retirement day.
Oops. 4 isn't even near 2 on the keyboard. That's why.
I love that.
Yeah,
May
Scott.
That's
7th,
thinking ahead.
4014.
So, I don't know, 2014, 15 goals.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted
Something
to
like
make sure.
that. I mean,
Kind of like what?
I think we're using one term in 2 different contexts here, but
Yeah.
it's more than a work plan.
The city commission has them, they call theirs milestones, I think.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you can pick your word,
Pick your word.
milestones, objectives,
Goals
whatever you
and
like.
priorities. And
The
then,
list is more important probably
Goals
than
and
the name.
priorities.
okay,
Okay,
is that it on that one?
I think so.
So, Mr. Chairman, what would we like to accomplish? Or do we want to go through this? It'll be past 10 o'clock.
Yep,
sure.
it will.
rising to a point of order?
Yeah, how time sensitive is the geohazard code updates?
It's not.
Could we put that off till the next meeting?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so
That'll
those
be
2
old,
can,
old business? Next time.
I just would, before we leave old business, I'd like to follow up on Doug's comment. Are we going to advocate then, as a group, to pursue in some way a resolution of the beaver issue? You would ask that. I'd like to keep it on old business for next month and figure out what we want to do.
Well, I would agree with that and suggest that what that means is that we pursue how we engage other appropriate advisory groups
Good.
in discussion about
Good.
that.
And have a way to discuss that and move forward at the next meeting.
Maybe use it like a case example, case history. I mean, this is like, if we were going to do it over again from scratch, how would you want to do it?
I guess my next question
That,
would be,
that
how
seems like a work session topic rather than in a meeting agenda. And then we can report on it at the meeting as an agenda item. But the actual, what we're talking about doing with that item, sounds like we should do that in a work session too.
So, how does something like this? Let's just say we had this discussion tonight about our goals and priorities, and we'd adopted this. How does this proposal fit into that? Because it's not on the work plan.
It's a recommended action relating to a natural resource concern.
So every month we can walk in here with a new recommend. I mean, we
I
won't
would-
get any of the things on the list done then.
I would
We'll
hope
just
not.
let you know that.
However, there are times and places where I think we need to give commentary, and we've done it in the past, and I don't think it's been a bad thing to do.
So, Tony, I think part of it is that you don't know like what's coming up, like with the trolley car bridge going down. It wasn't part of our work plan. Nobody anticipated it, but it happened, and so we got presentations, tried to provide constructive comments. So, I guess we need some of the flexibility because we can't anticipate everything that we might be asked to respond to or comment on.
Right. And I guess, okay, so let's just say we had adopted our goals and priorities. This wasn't on it. This came forward. What would we have done differently? Like, how would we do it now, like today?
I don't
And I
have
think
an
it's
answer.
probably we would go to PrAC, right? We'd have a
Well,
conversation.
I don't understand. It did go to PrAC. I know it went to PrAC. At least it went to the staff of PrAC. And I was asked to call Scott Archer's
Okay,
office,
Jerry,
which
can
I did.
Can I finish, please? And then, Can I
Yes,
just-
I'd be happy to, but then I want to make my point here.
That's fine.
All right, go
I'm
ahead.
not trying to be adversarial with you.
All right.
And I'm not debating what happened in the past. The question was, how would we handle this in the future? If this were
And
to
your
happen
question
today.
was, we should take it to PrAC, and we did. It was assigned to flow to PrAC and various other bodies.
Okay,
And
I don't believe that it ever went to the PrAC committee. So what I'm saying is that it probably should have gone to PrAC, probably should have gone to URC, right? And then if there was consensus to move forward with that, then we would have written and dove into writing the policy. I think that's how it probably should flow.
I don't disagree with that, but I mean, to more directly answer your question, what would we do if that came up during this year or next year? Well, I mean, my answer would be, it'd be an agenda item on that meeting with PrAC that we've already set up. That would be my
Right,
answer.
right, that, yeah,
Right. I think that's how we would probably do it
okay,
differently.
I see that. I see
The only
what you're saying.
problem with that might be, depending on the timing, you might, that issue might come up 11 months before you're meeting with PrAC, and if
Right.
something's time sensitive, you
Right.
can't wait almost a year.
Yeah, we have to set up an agreement with them that when something comes up, that we just communicate.
On a timely matter, yeah.
On a-
We're
yeah.
talking about two different things here. One of them are specific actions on the ground. The other one is a long-term development of best management practices or something like
I
that.
don't. Yeah, I guess I'd have to look at their agenda. I'm sure they have a similar provision for either adding an agenda item or a citizen comment. You know,
And
don't
the
think
next
it's as
question I would
difficult as
then
it
pose
as it
is,
seems.
if a citizen comes to us, as has happened routinely, with a concern, and it doesn't fit the matrix of what we've adopted, what do we do about that? Do we ignore the citizen input and not act? Or do we try to fit it in, or what do we do?
It depends
Depends
on
on
what the
what the
concern
request
is. I mean, if there's a more appropriate body to which that should be addressed, we could probably recommend that. For example, Transportation Advisory Committee or PrAC or somebody else.
Was the answer any different than
Or planning
concerns that we ourselves generate during the year? I mean, if somebody else brings it to us or we identify it ourselves, either way, I mean, then what you just said fits, doesn't it,
We
Pete?
take
I
it to
mean,
the appropriate committee.
you take it on the basis of what it is.
What it
and
is,
just
right, right.
On a case-by-case
and I mean,
basis, where does it
there's,
go?
there's differences between, we notice there's a cracked manhole. I mean, the versus, I really don't like the way this is developed. I mean, and so it's every one of these is case by case, right? I mean, we get who knows how many citizen comments a day, right? And each one of those either goes to the appropriate department or we're sorry, we don't address that, or I mean, the hypothetical is so huge, it's impossible to answer that question.
Sure.
It depends what it is.
That's why our
That's right.
code enforcement department deals with every aspect of code that might possibly be violated, and then it's up to those guys to figure out which department actually
Goes
solves
to.
the problem.
Right.
So it's quite
Yeah, I mean, it's between calling in, online,
Yeah.
the app. I mean, there's multiple ways for information to get to staff if there are concerns about something in the city.
Did you have something specific on that, just out of curiosity?
On what?
On Jerry, I'm talking about Jerry.
Excuse me?
Did you have something specific that's in mind, in your mind now?
Well, no, I just, if
Just a
commentary comes to
hypothetical.
us, that this is a public process, we invite public comment, or we don't.
Yes, yeah.
And if somebody has a comment doesn't fit, into what our work plan is, seems to me that we have an obligation to figure out what to do with it.
Yes.
And just because it isn't in the matrix doesn't mean that we don't address it.
Exactly.
Matter of fact, I think that applies to other thoughts we might have during the course of the year. If emergencies come up, we respond. If the North Spit is imminently threatened next year with destruction, we should have a suggestion of what to do. Let it happen, or I think that point where 25,000 was appropriated was someone was asked to do something. If there wasn't an easy fix, period. But or for instance, if things are happening with the boat ramp, which we know about right now, perhaps we do advocate for a lower reach study on the Clackamas to guide the city. before they build it again with Marine Board money. That kind of thing. That's not a part of our matrix.
No, so we probably wouldn't. I mean, we would find a vehicle for sharing that information.
Yes.
But that wouldn't be our work.
Right. But it might involve our recommendation,
Yeah.
you know.
That we do that, give it to the people
Yeah,
that are supposed to.
sure.
To do it, yeah.
Well,
Okay. So we're gonna move everything else that didn't get covered today
I
to
think
the
we
next
should,
agenda?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
including items 6, 7, and 6 and 7, so NRC member reports
Does
and staff.
anyone have
meetings.
something they have to say tonight in the member
Well,
reports?
I guess I do have one question, though. Are we talking about scheduling a work session before the next regularly scheduled
We-
monthly meeting? I don't
That's what I
know.
heard,
That's what we're talking about.
and I
Well,
coordinate.
Work group
Do we
or
have
the
a-
whole committee?
Do you have a conflict with?
We may have a conflict
Library?
with library board. I'll talk to Mo
Mm-hmm.
and see what can be done.
Is there another smaller
Yeah.
room that we could use here in the building for a work session? 'Cause work sessions don't have to
We
be.
struggled because of.
We have to have the public meetings thing.
Even
Yeah.
work
Work session
sessions?
Pardon?
For work sessions.
For
okay.
work
Oh,
sessions,
yeah.
we might be okay.
Did we ever
Yeah.
iron out this thing about
Yeah.
how many people can be in a work session without it being a public meeting?
2.
Weren't we debating that?
Yeah.
I thought
I
people
think
could
it's
be
less
in
than a
work
majority.
Less than the majority.
Yeah.
If there's more than, if there's 4 of you getting together in a setting to discuss,
So it's
it's a quorum.
it's
a
3.
It's a three-person work session. We don't have to worry about.
But if
Yeah.
you intentionally hold a meeting to talk about items that you would be working on, then you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I think this
You
is.
have
Well,
to-
you can do it, but you can't make any decisions.
Yeah.
And
Well,
the other,
yeah.
the other aspect of
Right.
the public meetings requirement is that it needs to be accessible, and the public needs to be able to have a place to listen and see it and chime in, so.
I think it's really important to have everybody involved in kind of getting this done, not just assign it 2 or 3 people, because
So I'll
Right,
coordinate and
right.
see if we can bump the schedule, to 6:30 perhaps, and start a little bit earlier.
I'd
for
rather
the
do
work
that
session.
than, I'm trying to ask, my question would be, what requires the work session? We've accomplished a lot tonight. We should be able, in another half an hour to 40 minutes, we allowed 105 minutes for this meeting tonight, okay? We're past that. But if we were to allow an hour for the subject to be resolved within our meeting structure, I think we can get it done.
We
And I
should,
don't know what else the work session needs to cover.
yeah.
Right.
The work session would be to cover exactly what we were voting on, so when the item came up, we'd introduce the item, did we discuss what it is that we're voting on, and then we'd have a motion, a second, and a vote. And that's the breadth of the conversation,
For all 21 things?
for all items, for all the items on the agenda.
Because
And that's the
you've-
only way,
You've already
Because
hashed
you've
it
already
out.
worked them out.
because you've already worked them out.
It's going to be really hard.
Yeah, you can't
To-
talk about them and vote on them at the same time, within that time frame.
If you really want to, the benefit of the work session is that you have a little bit of a freer conversation, and to
Okay.
sit here and
Because
try.
I really learn when we're all talking back and forth, we're throwing out
Agreed.
ideas and we're.
So do you think it requires, starting at 5? That's my question. Or could we start at 6 or 6:30?
Well, I might have to choose a different date if that's the case,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need a good hour and a half to work out everything that we're gonna vote on the next meeting and just roll with
Okay. All right.
That is merit myself.
it. Yeah.
So we'll work on scheduling, and
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, can I make one suggestion, though? If you guys are going to revise the work plan format to send out just kind of a draft, just of the format to make sure we're all kind of in agreement with it or kind of buying into the
Yes.
revision of it, I think it'd be great before, going too far on it.
Yep. As long as we get timely feedback,
Sure. Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I don't like the font. Just kidding.
Now my feelings are hurt.
Punchy when it gets out toward 10 o'clock.
Yes. I'm kidding, the font is fine.
Yeah, let's go home.
Yeah, I think we can adjourn.
Do we need a
Unless
motion or should we
there's
just?
something that has to be said tonight, we can just take off.
Okay.